It all begins with a continental war that lasted for 100 years, and during it, a legendary man operated in the shadows during its final stages. This man was Raya, who mastered the use of magical tools and wiped out tens of thousands of enemies. With precise attacks, he would slice the monsters right down the middle. Raya eliminated disaster-level creatures without breaking a sweat. He also blocked devastating magical attacks using his chains, and he didn't hesitate to take down the humans controlling those beasts. Following his country's orders, he took out everyone who pointed a blade his way, leaving a crimson trail wherever he went. However, he vanished as soon as the war ended, and his whereabouts have remained unknown ever since. Many years later, a young boy catches the attention of an elderly man working peacefully in a shop. The boy, named Ray, asks his grandfather if he knows any good methods for practicing with a sword. Riyat replies that this is barbaric nonsense and tells his grandson to go sweep the leaves in the garden instead of thinking about brawls. Confused, the young man questions the request, reminding him that his grandfather also used to wield a sword back in the day. But the old man smiles and says that is all in the past, claiming that nowadays it would be tough for him to even lift a blade. Ray laughs and agrees, joking that his grandpa is built like a twig compared to him. While stretching, the boy mentions that he wanted to train to use it as a reference for the academy exam, surprising the old man. With an excited smile, Ray says he found something he wants to do, but warns that it is still a secret and runs off. Riyat silently watches his grandson leave from behind the counter. With a soft smile, he realizes the boy has grown enough to forge his own path and decides to wait until he is ready to share it. Looking outside, the old man thinks he just needs to stick around until then, remembering the time Ray was born. Back then, Riot spent all his days fighting relentlessly. He was always on the battlefield, decimating entire armies. The man wiped out his enemies without mercy, painting the ground red. His expression was consumed by blind fury as he continued the devastation. Those days of endless combat for his country ended up turning him into a cold-hearted human weapon. And that violent life eventually cost him his beloved family. The flames of a fierce fire destroyed everything he had. His home was completely consumed by the blaze. Walking through the wreckage, Riyat found the heavily wounded bodies of his loved ones. Consumed by deep resentment, he could only think about finding out who had done that. But in the midst of all that tragedy, he heard a baby crying. Approaching, Riyat found little Ray protected in the arms of his late mother. The warrior's eyes widened when he realized the newborn had survived. He fell to his knees before the fallen and picked the child up. Holding that little baby amidst the ashes, he finally felt the weight of what was left of his life. The boy's cries soon turned into an innocent smile that lit up the darkness of that moment. Tears rolled down Riot's soot-covered face as the baby's tiny hands touched him. Back in the present, the old man reflects that Ray became his light, remembering the vow to protect the life his daughter left behind. Thinking he would do absolutely anything for his grandson's sake, Riot approaches a locked door at the back of the shop. He unlocks a heavy padlock securing thick chains to the door. The old man walks down the dark stairs, willing to break any taboo if it meant protecting his family. In the torch-lit basement, there is a figure sitting and covered by a sheet. Riot pulls the fabric, revealing an inert body stored there. The face of the sleeping young man looks exactly like him in his youth. The old man clutches his own chest in pain, knowing better than anyone that his current body will not hold out much longer. He stares at his younger version, convinced that as long as he has that backup body, he can keep taking care of Ray. Suddenly, a voice from upstairs catches his attention, letting him know a customer has arrived. Riot returns to the counter and greets the masked visitor, asking what kind of magical tool he is looking for. The man gives a sinister smile and replies that he wants mythical items. Riot's expression instantly changes, sensing the danger of the situation. The intruder steps forward quickly, saying it took a lot of work to find him and calls him by his real name, proving he knows exactly who he is. The masked man draws a dagger and says he came for the ultimate magical tools created by the one known as the Eliminator Puppet. Wasting no time, the assailant lunges quickly at the old man. He attacks fiercely, shouting that he is going to take every single item in the place. A massive flash of impact fills the room. When the smoke clears, the masked man smiles confidently. He notices Riot is still remarkably active despite his age, as the old man used his magical tool creation skill to defend himself. The block was made with the Holy Shield Aegis, capable of nullifying damage below a certain threshold and granting absolute protection. With a sharp look, Ryot asks where the man heard about the mythical items. The intruder mocks the old man's serious expression, saying it is useless to glare at him like that. Prepping a new strike, he claims to be just the mercenary hired for the job. Realizing the situation, Ryot decides to take action and activates his skill again. An energy blast obliterates the shop's wall, taking the fight outside. The masked man is sent flying by the force of the impact. He tries to recover while staring at the intense light in front of him. Ryot emerges wielding the Holy Sword Excalibur, a magical tool that pushes his physical strength and magical power to the absolute limit. The old man points the glowing blade, demanding the intruder spill everything he knows. With an intimidating stance, Ryot orders the mercenary to reveal his master's whereabouts. The masked man merely smiles, admitting he expected exactly this level of intimidation. However, he points at Ryot and states that the old man cannot hide the frailty of his aging body. At that exact moment, Ryot feels a sharp pang and falters. To make matters worse, Ray appears in the middle of the chaos calling for his grandpa. Ryot panics, seeing his grandson there. The intruder flashes a twisted smile while the old man begs the boy to stay back. But it is already too late, as the masked man appears right behind Ray and uses a mythical bell called Echoes of Memory. Ryot freaks out, instantly recognizing that dangerous artifact. The mercenary holds the hypnotized young man and praises his build, satisfied with the result. Taking advantage of the mind control, the intruder places a sword in Ray's hands. The enemy mocks the situation, predicting that fighting his own grandson will be way too hard for an old man. Without a second thought, Ray charges violently at Ryot. The grandfather can barely block the powerful strike, getting pushed back. Ryot thinks to himself that the bell has the power to alter the memories of anyone who hears it. To break his grandson's brainwashing, he would need to defeat the user of the magical tool. The other alternative would be to deliver a heavy blow directly to the boy's head during the clash. Realizing the risk of letting the fight drag on, the old man concludes he has no other choice. He lunges forward and lands a quick strike to incapacitate the boy. Ryot silently begs for his grandson's forgiveness with an expression of pure agony. The impact hits Ray square on, knocking the young man out instantly. Right after, a burst of energy lights up the battlefield. With Ray lying unconscious against a tree, the masked man taunts Ryot for showing no mercy even to his own family. The enemy's smile fades when Ryot coldly replies that he knows exactly how to hold back. Feeling the old man's overwhelming, crushing pressure, the mercenary realizes he is in critical danger. Ryot gives him no time to react and brings down Excalibur in a devastating slash of pure light. Cornered, the masked man accepts his time is up. However, a new imposing figure appears and blocks the attack, revealing himself to be the mercenary's master. Both Ryot and the masked man are caught off guard by the sudden interruption. The old man breaks into a cold sweat trying to process what is happening. He recognizes that the new enemy's presence is completely bizarre and threatening. The newcomer counterattacks brutally, putting Ryot in a terrible spot. Ryot's aging body hits its limit, and his heart takes a massive shock from the extreme exertion. The old man clutches his chest in pain, cursing his body for failing him at such a crucial moment. The mercenary's master unleashes a brutal strike that hits Ryot head-on. The new adversary stares coldly at the fallen old man. Even wounded, Ryot manages to defend himself against the giant sword using his magical tools. Groaning in pain, the old man declares that despite his aging body, he will not give up so easily. He assures them his mind and skills are just as sharp as ever. However, crimson puddles start forming on the ground, showing the severity of his injuries. Ryot's vision begins to blur from pushing himself too hard. He feels his strength fading fast while trying to stay conscious. While focusing on the enemy's attack, Ryot is brutally stabbed from behind. The old man coughs up red and is devastated when he realizes the blade was driven by his own grandson. The shock of that action snaps the boy out of his brainwashing, leaving him completely bewildered. Ray panics when he sees his grandfather gravely wounded leaning against his back. Desperate, the young man stammers Ryot's name, having no idea what just happened. He stares at his own trembling hands while holding the stained sword. Taking advantage of their vulnerability, the mercenary's master delivers a crushing blow to finish the fight. A violent explosion completely wipes out the impact zone. Coughing through the dust, the boy manages to stand up with great difficulty. Terrified, Ray screams for his grandpa, searching for him among the rubble. But the intimidating figure of the enemy looms right behind him, warning the boy that he is in the way. Amidst the destruction, Ryot tries to move, but realizes the damage to his body is way too severe. Losing a lot of vitality, the old man despairs seeing the enemy near his grandson and yells for him to stay away. Ignoring the danger, Ray steps in front of his grandpa and declares he will not let them lay another finger on him. With a look of pure disdain, the adversary replies he will show zero mercy. Riot drags himself across the ground and begs his grandson to run, knowing he stands absolutely no chance of winning. But the boy holds his ground, determined to protect his only family. The mercenary's master prepares to deal the final blow. With heavy steps, the enemy marches forward without an ounce of pity. With an impulsive shout, Ray charges at the adversary with all his courage. He attacks fiercely, but the man easily deflects the strike. Riot screams his grandson's name, absolutely terrified by the sheer difference in power between the two. In a swift, brutal motion, the enemy strikes Ray's chest. The old man watches helplessly as his grandson's wounded body collapses. The image of Ray's gentle smile floods Riot's mind, shattering his heart into pieces. The young man falls completely unconscious into a crimson puddle. Satisfied with the outcome, the master scolds his masked henchman for almost leaving witnesses behind. Ignoring the excruciating pain, Riot desperately starts dragging himself toward his grandson. When he tries to reach out his hand to grab Ray, the enemy brutally steps on his arm. The man mocks the old man's pathetic state, reminding him that he once used to be the absolute strongest warrior. Raising his giant sword, the master states that his glory days are over. One last strike is delivered mercilessly, painting the ground red. In the middle of an immense darkness, a small blue flame begins to glow brightly. Deep within his own mind, Riot cries on his knees, consumed by guilt for letting his grandson perish. He thinks about how that child was the only thing that saved him from deep despair after losing his old life. Watching the young boy grow up had given a brand new purpose to his war-torn soul. The memory of Ray's smile awakens an uncontrollable fury inside the old warrior. Consumed by absolute hatred, he swears he will avenge his grandson's demise at any cost. At that exact moment, a mysterious notification reveals that the final condition for the Eliminator puppet's awakening skill has been met. With the magical manipulation limit removed, Ryot's youthful body stored in the basement begins to radiate intense flames. The system warns that, due to the skill's effects, the user's soul will be directly transferred into the magical tool. The sheet covering the vessel turns to ash, kickstarting the legendary warrior's rebirth process. Wrapped in intense crimson magical energy, Ryot's soul is completely transferred into his new vessel. The young, fully restored face of the legendary warrior finally opens its eyes. The system recognizes the new form as the mythical item, Riot's reincarnation puppet. This kind of relic belongs to a highly feared category in the world. Mythical items are forbidden creations made by Riot Burger himself back in the day. They were tools capable of controlling time, space, and people's very souls. A power so overwhelming that rulers from everywhere desperately sought to use it. There were pipes that let you see the future, to flaming rides that allowed you to jump through space. Some items worked like keys to unlock hearts and tear out secrets, while others, like a special harp, could manipulate the emotions of anyone who heard them. However, most of these powerful relics met a mysterious fate. They all vanished without a trace as soon as Riot disappeared after the war. Back in the present, the masked mercenary rests next to the burning house, complaining about the mess. He grumbles that such a flashy entrance would attract too many witnesses and be a hassle to clean up, since the orders were to leave no trace. Holding a small glowing relic he stole, the intruder smiles and says he at least deserves to keep a prize for all that hard work. But his joy is short-lived, as Riot emerges in his new form, radiating a terrifying presence. The legendary warrior thinks about how he created that backup body solely to watch his grandson grow up in peace. Summoning a colossal blade called the guillotine cutter, he prepares to execute the operatives. Fury overflows from his eyes as he remembers those monsters had the nerve to end an innocent child's life. Without hesitating, Riot brings the gigantic weapon down on the mercenary, stating that every action has consequences. The masked man notices the attack too late and freezes in pure terror. A devastating strike wipes out everything in its path, completely obliterating the enemies. With an unforgiving glare, Riot promises he will make every single one of them pay for their crimes. Sometime later, the smoke and noise of battle give way to the silence of a ruined forest. Riot uses a shovel to dig a grave in the cold dirt. With a heavy heart and empty eyes, the warrior whispers his grandson's name. Memories of a tiny, smiling ray pulling on his hand start flooding his mind. He remembers the meals where the boy would playfully complain and call him unfair, the nights when the kid would show up at his door saying he could not sleep, and, finally, the young man's beaming smile announcing he had a secret about what he wanted to do in the future. Riyadh closes his eyes, fighting to hold back the deep anguish crushing his soul. Standing before his grandson's makeshift grave, the old warrior regrets never finding out what Ray's big dream really was. The sadness quickly turns to rage as he recalls the mysterious man who ordered the attack, known only as the Client. Determined, Riot swears he is going to track down the scumbag and make him suffer. Aside from payback, he needs to recover the mythical items stolen from his shop, searching for any clues in the masked man's remains. He finds a pendant with a blue jewel and recognizes the crest as belonging to the Yugen tribe. Using his creation skill, Riot materializes the Stardust Compass, a tool that extracts information from objects to track their owners. With that artifact in hand, he plans to follow every single lead until he reaches the true mastermind behind the hit. The device projects a glowing map pointing to a mountainous region, and he decides his first move will be to raid the enemy base. Wasting no time, the warrior travels to the coordinates shown by the magic map. The Yugen tribe's pendant pulses in his hand, confirming he is on the right track. This tribe possesses a soul-reading ability capable of extracting memories from the fallen, heavily used as an intelligence unit during the war. Riot walks across a stone bridge toward a ruined fortress, known as the Hidden Village of the Bone Valley. He reflects on how he was always extremely cautious, interacting with very few people since he vanished to avoid being tracked. But facing operatives from the Yugen tribe, the game changes entirely, since they hunt down anyone who ever crossed his path. By stealing memories from the fallen piece by piece, the tribe managed to put the puzzle together until they found his exact location. His train of thought is cut short when a sharp blade is pressed against his neck. A hooded operative warns him that only clan members know about this place and demands his identity. Several other masked figures emerge from the fog, threatening to end him right there if he refuses to answer. With a calm look, Riot asks if they seriously think an intruder would answer questions politely. Annoyed by his audacity, one of the robes tells the kid to perish and lunges with his dagger, but Riot blocks the attack effortlessly using an energy blade. The enemy's eyes go wide, completely shocked by the flawless defense. Without missing a beat, the warrior counters with a devastating blow that sends the operative flying into the rubble. Another tribe member steps back in fear upon noticing his buddy's knife was shattered to pieces. Realizing the intruder's raw power, the group decides to crush him by firing concentrated magic blasts. They unleash the ruthless attack, claiming they could identify the target using just whatever scraps of meat were left over. However, Riot summons a vortex of blue energy that completely dissipates the explosion. He casually walks out of the smoke, brushing the dust off his coat as if nothing had happened. The attackers tremble in fear before that imposing figure, wondering if he is some kind of monster. Ignoring their panic, Riot deduces out loud that this group must have hunted down every single person who ever had contact with him. With a dark expression, he asks how many innocent lives they took just to extract the right memories. Faced with the enemy's terrified silence, the warrior tells them they do not need to say another word and activates his magical tool creation. A massive, terrifying Iron Maiden bursts from the ground right behind one of the operatives. Riot shoots a deadpan glare and declares that the only thing he wants to hear from them now is their screaming. The torture device slams shut violently, trapping the man inside. Crimson flows through the cracks of the steel machine as it fulfills its macabre purpose. Riot walks through the courtyard now filled with multiple Iron Maidens, leaving behind a trail of devastation and silence. Red puddles form at the base of the magical tools, sealing the tragic fate of the Yugen tribe. In the midst of that wipeout, a single survivor wakes up groaning in pain. The man's eyes widen as he sees the torture machines all around him, unable to believe all his comrades were annihilated. Riot steps up and confirms that everyone is gone except for him because he passed out, making the robe scream furiously, asking what the intruder wants. Summoning a glowing dagger, the warrior tells the prisoner to just focus on spilling everything he knows, admitting his method is old school, but it gets the job done. Pressing the blade against the terrified man's throat, Riot demands the client's location. Sometime later, the interrogated man's lifeless body remains tied to a chair in the dark basement. Riot sighs in frustration upon realizing the guy knew nothing useful, confirming his suspicions that the search would not be that simple. Tearing through every corner of the enemy base, the only clue he manages to find is a stack of client logs. The warrior carefully analyzes the documents in a dimly lit room. The list contains names of high-ranking officials from various nations and the elite, but he quickly notices the page numbers do not match up. Riot grumbles, calling the enemy cautious since someone purposely ripped parts of the record out. He figures that, considering the effort taken to cover their tracks and the absurd strength shown in the forest, the mastermind must hold a position of immense power. Recalling the client's words during the clash, claiming Riot was once the strongest of all, a suspicion pops into his mind. The warrior narrows his eyes, realizing the enemy is very likely someone who knew him back in the days of the Great War. Still, he shakes his head and decides not to jump to conclusions, needing more intel before making a move. Just then, a specific flyer on the table catches his eye. Reading the paper carefully, Riot finally decides his next destination. The document shows a picture of a brown-haired man wearing glasses. The warrior concludes he needs to gather more data on the mysterious client to continue his payback. And that man in the photo is the only person he can turn to right now. The scene shifts to a massive, luxurious estate with a large cemetery in the garden. Riot calmly observes the place through the iron gates. Without making a fuss, he breaks into the grand mansion looking for answers. His footsteps echo through the empty hallways as he explores the interior of the house. The warrior steps into an elegant office, scanning every detail of the room. On the desk, he finds a framed family portrait. Suddenly, a confused voice sounds behind him, and someone lunges to hit him with a sneak attack. Riot senses the movement instantly and braces for impact. He blocks the powerful kick with his arm, sending a shockwave rippling through the room. The owner of the house, the same bespectacled man from the flyer, steps back and glares at the young intruder, asking who he is. Lit Brown is completely shocked looking at the intruder and asks why he looks so much like that person. The young man merely comments that this is a pretty cold welcome for someone he hasn't seen in so long. He adds that they are old buddies and a hug would be nice, making Lit even more furious and completely bewildered. Not in the mood to chat, Lit activates his iron arm skill and throws a devastating punch at Riot. The force of the strike creates a violent whirlwind that rips through the entire room. The sheer power of the attack is so overwhelming it shatters one of the mansion's windows. Through the dust, Lit tries to spot his target and shouts out for him. Right then, Riot appears, effortlessly catching his old friend's fist and asking why he is being attacked. Lit gets even more ticked off, tells the intruder to shut his mouth, and tries to swing again. While dodging, Riot wonders if his old acquaintance really couldn't recognize him at all. He moves with mind-blowing agility to dodge every single strike, leaving Lit totally stunned. Watching that flawless evasion, Lit finally realizes he recognizes those signature moves from somewhere. Riot mentions he had already tried explaining the situation as he positions his leg to counterattack. With a focused gaze, the young man firmly reassures him that it is really him standing before his buddy. He delivers a powerful kick that Lit tries to block, complaining he is sick and tired of repeating himself. The impact of the counter is so massive it sends Lit crashing violently against the floor of the room. Groaning in pain from the hit, the merchant tries to gather himself as the fighting stops. Riot looks at his downed friend and admits to himself he might have gone a little overboard with the punch. Outside the gorgeous mansion, Lit's voice echoes, finally accepting that the mysterious youth is indeed his former partner Riot. Rucking a bandage on his forehead from the brawl, Lit Brown, Riot's old war buddy, is still trying to process all this crazy nonsense. While calmly sipping a cup of tea, Riot mentions he was pretty hurt that he wasn't recognized right away. The MC jokes that getting old must be scary, but Lit snaps back angrily, asking how he was supposed to guess when people don't usually age backwards. Lit keeps rumbling and questions the raw power behind that recent hit, claiming Riot is packing an even heavier punch than in his prime. Riot explains that magical tools are the secret, and sarcastically remarks he expected better perception from an ex-member of the Royal Army's Independent Rangers. Lit sighs and reminds him that was a lifetime ago, as he's been out of active duty for a very long time. He explains he stepped away from it all once the conflict ended and that the world has totally changed since then. The man recalls that people finally stopped fighting to rebuild their lives, focusing strictly on a better future. This pursuit of peace and prosperity made everyone try to move forward far away from the battlefields. Lit reveals he himself ended up settling down and starting a family, becoming a major merchant who runs the capital's trade network. Riot praises his buddy's massive life upgrade, and Lit agrees it was one heck of a promotion. However, Lit points at him and asks what he is plotting, showing up out of nowhere looking just like he did in the past. Faced with the direct question, Riot goes silent for a moment with a thoughtful look. The MC then reveals with a heavy heart that he had also become a grandfather. He explains it is a long story and asks if his friend is willing to hear everything that went down. Silence fills the sunlit office as Riot's tragic tale unfolds. After listening to the whole story quietly, Lit holds his teacup and says he finally gets the picture. The merchant takes a sip of his drink and expresses his sorrow that his old buddy had to go through absolute hell. He then figures Riot found his name on the Yugen tribe's client list, and that is why he decided to track him down. Riot admits he was shocked to see his friend's name on it, while Lit tenses up thinking about the danger of an underworld list leaking. Lit defends himself saying the business world has its own headaches, but quickly changes the subject, asking what Riot plans to do from here on out. Clenching his fist with sheer determination, the warrior states that his next move is already set in stone. With a dark look completely thirsty for payback, he guarantees he is only after retaliation against the ones responsible. Lit looks at his partner with concern and asks if getting even is really what the late Ray would have wanted him to do. With a cryptic expression, Riot just smirks and replies he will never know what his grandson would think. He goes on to say this is his way of taking responsibility and that every mistake made comes with a heavy price tag. The warrior adds that this whole manhunt isn't just about a personal vendetta for what happened to Ray. Riot points out that the mythical relics stolen from his shop pose an overwhelming threat if they fall into the wrong hands. If those forbidden items are misused, the very fate of the world could be easily rewritten, something he will never allow. Lit agrees with the gravity of the situation and asks if his buddy's plan is seriously to hunt down the mysterious client. Riot confirms it is and says that is exactly why he needs his help, making Lit glad to see his old partner getting straight to the point. Riot hands a folded piece of paper to Lit Brown and asks him to gather every single material on that list. He explains with a confident grin that he intends to forge a powerful new magical tool to take that scumbag down. Lit Brown accepts the task without hesitation and agrees to help his friend with the prep work. However, the merchant looks him dead in the eye and warns him there's one more crucial detail to handle. He recalls Riot had plenty of underworld connections back in the war days and asks if he knows how to break into the Shadow Guild, where all classified intel is stored. This secret spot is known as the Table of Ruin, hidden away beneath the massive Kubrick library. The library's fame is for being the capital's largest archive of knowledge, but its public purpose is just a front. The real objective of that entire colossal structure is to hide the gateway into the underworld. Riot casually strolls through the library aisles until he finds the correct section. He starts shifting books around in a specific sequence to trigger the hidden mechanism. A soft rumble echoes as concealed gears begin turning behind the wall. With the puzzle solved, a secret passage into the darkness finally opens up before him. The warrior walks down a long spiral staircase in silence, lit only by a few torches on the stone walls. Reaching the bottom of the steps, he stares in awe at the macabre setting laid out before him. That massive mystical hall serves as the headquarters for the Shadow Guild known as the Table of Ruin. Suddenly, a hulking warrior leaps from the shadows, launching a terrifying sneak attack at Riot. But the MC dodges the lethal blow with total ease, making the heavy weapon smash nothing but the floor. He catches the massive club with one hand and sarcastically remarks that this is quite the warm welcome. The attacker introduces himself as Randold, the bounty hunter eliminator, laughing and saying that is just how things operate around here. Next, Randold brushes off the fight and cheerfully waves at the young receptionist watching the scene. The friendly receptionist Mina responds with a glowing smile, reminding him that every job offered there is incredibly dangerous. She jokes that anyone who signs up lacking resolve ends up losing their life for nothing, and cleaning up the mess afterward costs the guild a fortune. Following the grim warning, she asks if he still wants to register, and Riot confirms without missing a beat that he came specifically for that. Mina explains they will hold an entrance exam next, and asks the young man to provide his operating code name. Riot thinks about picking an alias, knowing any old moniker he used could be easily tracked by his enemies. He needs a handle that helps him hunt his target, something perfectly suited for a man consumed by revenge. With a steady and determined gaze, a clear choice forms in the warrior's mind. He flashes a slight smirk and confirms he has already picked the perfect name. Riot asks to be registered under the name of his late grandson Ray, taking on his identity to honor his memory. The receptionist accepts the name and announces that Mr. Ray's registration exam will commence right now. A bit surprised, Riot asks about this exam and Mina cheerfully confirms it. She pulls open a massive metal door and asks the young man to follow her while she breaks down the rules on the way. As they head down the underground stairs, Mina explains that, just like the regular Adventurers Guild, they also rank all missions by tiers. She points out that missions are broken down into 7 categories ranging from rank S to F, stressing that even the easiest gig carries a real risk of not coming back. Riot figures the guild runs this strict screening just to keep their roster top tier and weed out the amateurs. Smiling, Mina confirms and emphasizes that they handle serious business and cannot entrust major tasks to unprepared rookies. The warrior quietly reflects on how sad it is to see a business built on taking lives still thriving, even during times of peace. Randall interrupts Riot's thoughts and asks if he seriously plans on taking that lethal exam. The brute smirks sadistically and says he is there because this place pays top dollar for any kind of dirty work. He bites his lip and confesses that, by picking the right missions, he can satisfy his craving to eliminate as many people as he wants. The psycho slips into a trance of pure madness, shaking just thinking about the absolute chaos to come. Mina walks right past them without caring, and casually comments that the guild is always packed with clients thirsting for chaos just like that. They finally arrive at a massive circular underground arena, and Riot takes in the sheer scale of the place. The receptionist introduces the eerie space as the Pit of Cursed Offerings. With a polite smile, she announces the exam will begin right away and points to the stairs leading down to the bottom of the pit. The MC walks to the edge of the platform and thoughtfully stares into the darkness below. Heading down to the arena floor, they group up with other shady warriors also waiting to take the test. From the top of the platform, Mina shouts down to all the participants asking if they are ready to go. One of the competitors yells furiously about the delay, demanding the test start already and threatening to end anyone in his way. A mysterious voice from the top mocks the warrior's lack of patience, ticking him off even more with the taunt. Mina cheerfully announces from above that the test is starting and tells everyone to watch their step very carefully. One of the participants gets confused by the warning and looks down, clueless about what is about to happen. Suddenly, the arena floor splits wide open, glowing brightly and revealing a terrifying gap. The warriors panic as they realize there is a massive pool of boiling lava right beneath them. Riot feels the extreme heat rising through the cracks, while the other competitors scramble to shield themselves from the scorching steam. Mina explains the floor will keep opening until it completely retracts into the walls, leaving only one single way to survive. Riot looks up and notices several long chains starting to drop from the cavern ceiling. She adds that anyone who manages to stay alive after the floor vanishes entirely will be considered passing. With a friendly wave, the receptionist wishes all candidates good luck before the madness begins. One of the warriors groans in despair, realizing the chains are hanging way too high for a normal human to reach. However, a guy in a suit and glasses chews enthusiastically, seeing this as the perfect chance to flex his mobility skills. He triggers his skywalk skill and starts bounding through the air as if stepping on invisible platforms, heading straight for the chains. A warrior on the ground screams in anger, accusing the man of trying to cheat his way up before anyone else. The guy in glasses just laughs mockingly, reaching out his hand to grab the chain and secure his safety. Yet, another competitor wearing a bandana flashes a sick smile and points his finger, guaranteeing he won't let him off that easy. He activates his vector alteration skill to manipulate gravity and mid-air trajectory. Hit by the invisible strike, the flying man gets caught in a gravitational vortex and starts falling completely out of control. He screams in terror, realizing he has completely lost control of his body and is plummeting straight to his doom. Unable to save himself, the man drops directly into the boiling lava and is consumed by the flames in seconds. The guy with the bandana bursts out laughing and mocks the loser, saying trying to save yourself soul in this place is completely idiotic. Reinhold also starts laughing like a maniac, celebrating the arrival of the violence and claiming merely surviving would be way too boring. The brute charges at the other participants and starts dealing lethal blows, swearing he will wipe everyone out until he is the only one left to pass. One of the fighters catches on to the real motive behind it all and curses, realizing the test was designed as a total death trap. He figures out the guild's true goal is to make all candidates take each other out to trim down the number of survivors. The MC watches all that devastation with his arms crossed, questioning if the entrance exam really just boils down to this pointless bloodshed. The seasoned warrior suspects the cruel simplicity of the trial, wondering if there is a catch to this challenge. Suddenly, Reinhold rushes at Riot full speed for a surprise attack. The brute yells at the kid, telling him to stop acting like he is better than everyone else and playing the tough guy. He challenges Riot to a straight-up brawl, demanding he fight for real so they can both have some fun in the chaos. Showing absolutely zero fear, Riot glares coldly at the aggressor and warns he wouldn't last 3 seconds in a real fight. Reinhold gets furious at the jab, but Riot just points to the ceiling and suggests the meathead should focus on how he plans to survive the test instead. He points out that eliminating everyone in the arena will do absolutely nothing if nobody can reach the chains hanging above. Hearing the advice, one of the surviving warriors agrees with the MC's logic and decides to move immediately. Using the other's distraction, he jumps with everything he has toward one of the dangling chains. Reinhold and the rest watch the guy climb, curious to see if his game plan will actually pan out. The warrior manages to reach the iron structure and cheers in relief as he grips the object with both hands. However, the second he puts his weight on the chain, the metal starts glowing intensely in a fiery red-hot hue. He screams in sheer agony, realizing the chains are superheated and literally searing his skin off. Unable to endure the horrific pain of the burns, he lets go of the metal and plummets straight into the lava pit. Reinhold sits on the floor utterly spooked and admits that was way too close, complaining Riot almost talked him into making the exact same fatal blunder. The brute watches the other guy's body melt in the lava and comments he never would have guessed the metal would be too blazing hot to hold. The guy with the bandana, who had been watching from afar, cracks an evil smile and claims now that he has figured out the trap. The test is a total breeze. One of the surviving warriors gets caught completely off guard, grabbed from behind with zero chance to react. He completely panics, having no clue what the attacker is about to do to him. The man with the bandana locks the poor guy down tight and gets ready to use him in a wildly messed up way. Using the other candidates' bodies as thermal insulation, he ties them to the scorching chain so he can climb without getting burned. The poor victims scream in pure agony as their skin is literally melted against the glowing metal to serve as a stepping stone. From the top of the arena, Mina watches the grotesque display with a cynical smile, finding the rogue's method highly creative and bold. The psycho climbs over the mutilated bodies with a sadistic grin on his face, ironically thanking them for the sacrifice that secured his passing grade. Riot watches the despicable scene with a look of utter disgust and whispers to himself that the man is the scum of the earth. Reinhold yells at Riot to hurry up and climb already, warning that the floor is about to vanish completely into the lava. He complains in a mocking tone that all the other candidates have already faded away and there are no more sacrifices left to use as heat shields on the chains. The floor finally fully retracts, leaving nothing but an endless sea of fire right below them. Riot repeats the word sacrifices with a serious, thoughtful look. The young man firmly replies he does not need any cowardly tricks like that to get up there. With a swift pinpoint move, Riot jumps and stomps hard right on Reinhold's face. He uses the brute's head as a springboard to reach the chain safely. Gripping the blazing hot metal without taking a single scratch, Riot reveals that his new artificial body is completely immune to extreme heat. Meanwhile, a massive crowd gathers in the square outside the Sephiroth Knights Order headquarters. The citizens chat excitedly about getting the chance to see the legendary Sword Star up close once again. Everyone in the capital looks up to the group, viewing the warriors as the ultimate symbols of justice and the realm's strongest defenders. The people feel totally secure knowing these formidable heroes are guarding the borders from any threat. A woman in the crowd excitedly points toward the main entrance of the Grand Palace. Cheers echo everywhere, and confetti is tossed to welcome back the knights returning from their deployment. The knight's leader walks through the applause with a calm, commanding presence. The standout knight is introduced to the crowd as Sir Haste, an absolute hero praised by all. Back in the underground arena, Riot keeps holding the boiling chain effortlessly thanks to his special body. Watching from the guild's upper balcony, two mysterious figures are completely blown away by what they are seeing. The dark-haired, yellow-eyed kid finds the rookie's attitude highly intriguing, while his female companion agrees with a muffled chuckle. However, she finishes the thought while analyzing Riyadh's stance. With a sadistic glare, the woman in the black dress complains there hasn't been enough red spilled in this test yet. While tumbling toward the lava, Randall screams in pure rage, telling the kid to get his foot off his face right this second. With a hint of mockery, Riot smiles and thanks the brute for serving as an excellent stepping stone for his jump. He pushes off with massive force, driving the opponent's head even further down and leaving him with zero chance of escaping the fall. Riot lands flawlessly next to the receptionist, who congratulates him on an outstanding performance, while Randall screams bloody murder from down below. Mina points at the arena and officially announces that the only two to pass the entrance exam were them. Next, she hands over a sheet of paper and says she will take care of the official registration now, confirming the rookie will start at the very bottom rank. With a friendly tone, she explains that just like the missions, the guild members also hold power rankings. She breaks down that everyone starts at rank F and slowly climbs the ladder as they successfully wrap up missions. Riot gets that he just needs to keep grinding to rank up fast, but the receptionist warns that even the easiest jobs are life or death. She grumbles, annoyed about rookies who bail halfway through and run back home, making Riot realize just how cutthroat the gig really is. The young woman explains that the top-tier members have crossed the line between life and the end countless times on extremely difficult assignments. She highlights that these underworld legends are absolute veterans, hardened by brutal, grueling battles. The elite members score tons of exclusive perks and, upon hitting rank S, get clearance to read highly restricted classified intel. That sensitive data is kept locked away deep inside the mysterious classified archives library. She hypes the kid up to aim for the top so he can access jobs with insane payouts that only the absolute best can pull off. Riot deduces that this secret library is the heart of the guild, and if there is any clue about the client anywhere in the world, it is definitely in there. Hell-bent on getting what he wants, he asks, straight up, what the fastest way to hit rank S is. Out of nowhere, the dark-haired kid who was watching the test jumps down next to them and cynically replies, "You just have to drop a lot of bodies." Mina gets spooked by the surprise drop-in and whispers the boy's name, making Riot curious about who he is. The receptionist shakes nervously, recalling that this child prodigy has already been officially approved for a promotion into the guild's absolute elite. He is introduced as Lord Gaia, the top seed of rank A and the undisputed strongest warrior in the current bracket. Riot stares him down, recognizing he is standing in front of the #1 operative in the entire intermediate division. The prodigy joined the guild at just 5 years old and has already eliminated tens of thousands of targets, making him the youngest elite member in history. Gaia flashes a friendly smile and asks if Riot is also desperately itching to reach that coveted S rank. However, he leans in with a creepy grin and whispers mockingly that it is never going to happen. The robe backs up his trash talk by pointing out Riot just stood there watching the devastation since the trial began. He narrows his eyes maliciously and highlights that the rookie didn't have the guts to take the life of a single competitor in there. Gaia steps even closer, practically sniffing Riot's clothes in a super provocative way to intimidate him. He lets out a mocking laugh and says he can smell the nauseating stench of fake righteousness coming off him from a mile away. Riot echoes his expression with total disdain, completely unfazed by the child prodigy's taunts. Gaia explains his twisted mindset, asking what the logic is in leaving people alive who might try to come back for payback later and slit your throat. The shadow operative admits the rookie has some serious combat chops, but stresses that it still isn't enough for the underworld. He breaks into a terrifying smile and insanely claims you have to systematically annihilate every single enemy on principle. Riot stays quiet, simply watching the kid's arrogant posturing with pure indifference. Gaia goes on to say, the guild is an exclusive club for those who get off on watching the red flow and who dumped their human morals in the trash a long time ago. He points his finger inches from Ryot's face and warns him mockingly that if the rookie keeps acting soft like that, he will end up in the dirt real fast. Instead of backing down, the legendary warrior just flashes a faint sarcastic smile at the threat. Gaia is baffled by the reaction and asks what is so funny, prompting Riot to calmly gesture back. The MC puts a friendly hand on Gaia's shoulder, catching the kid totally off guard. He leans in and sarcastically mentions that seeing the next S-rank member caring so much about his well-being really warms his heart. Gaia's eyes go wide and he gets incredibly pissed off, realizing he is being clowned by a mere rank F nobody. Riot adds that he appreciates the concern, but he has urgent business to take care of and no time to waste on pointless chatter. With sheer audacity, the warrior's hand slides down to Gaia's neck as he drops a heavy truth bomb. With his eyes glowing a bright, intense blue, Riot coldly states that if taking the kid out guaranteed his immediate promotion, he would rip his head off right this second. Gaia jumps back completely freaked out, telling the guy to get his hands off him like they are old pals and calling him a total weirdo. Shaking with raw fury, the young prodigy asks if the rookie seriously thinks he can take him down just because he survived one basic entrance exam. He furiously warns that a nobody rank F rookie shouldn't act so high and mighty in front of an elite warrior. Morphing into a beast-like form with razor-sharp claws and glowing eyes, Gaia swears Riot wouldn't last 10 seconds in a real fight against him. Not showing a single ounce of worry about the kid's transformation, Riot simply readies himself for the clash. However, Randall pops up behind them again, complaining they are making battle plans without letting him in on the fun. The massive brute furiously guarantees he will be the only one to have the pleasure of finishing Riot off with his own two hands. Riot just turns his back on the meathead and calmly tells him not to even bother. He coldly warns that once Randall is dealt with, he won't even have the time to regret his life choices. The bounty hunter eliminator gets veins popping on his forehead from pure rage and demands to know what the rookie just said. Without missing a beat, the brute lunges like a lightning bolt, trying to crush Riot's head with his bare hands. He screams the kid has a lot of nerve mouthing off to the infamous bounty hunter eliminator and vows to smash his face right there. Even temporarily locked in place, Riot just lets out a long, bored sigh at all that arrogance. However, Randall's smirk vanishes instantly when he notices glowing magical wires wrapping all around him. Riot activates his overpowered creation skill to summon an absolute defense mechanism. He materializes the tool, Iron Pruning Stakes, a pair of stakes connected by high-speed wires capable of slicing through anything, and reminds the enemy he had already warned him. Before the brute can even blink, the vibrating wires cleanly pass through his body. In a fraction of a second, Randall is completely shredded to pieces right in front of Gaia's and Mina's shocked eyes. The warrior stands unbothered under the crimson rain, proving he shows absolute zero mercy to anyone who tries to swing at him. Gaia takes a step forward, trying to hide his shock, and casually remarks the rookie just beat up some irrelevant nobody. The child prodigy leaps at Riot with his razor-sharp claws, demanding he stop acting so cocky over a cheap trick. Masterfully dodging the lightning-fast strike, Ryot reads the kid's movements and admits his power and speed are absolutely flawless for a future S-rank. Yet the legendary warrior readies a lightning-fast counter upon noticing one massive flaw in the kid's game plan. He summons the Scarlet Whip of Lament, a magical weapon whose power scales with the user's mana, and points out that Gaia always attacks predictably in a straight line. The Crimson Energy Whip wraps tightly around the boy's body with surgical precision, stopping his charge completely dead in its tracks. Even bound by the magical restraints, the kid roars with anger and swears that basic parlor trick won't be enough to hold him down. Appearing right behind his opponent in a flash, Rio calmly comments he fully expected that kind of stubborn resistance. Gaia senses the adversary's presence way too late and desperately tries to break free from the magic whip. Riot fires off a blue energy impact barrier that violently slams the boy into the arena floor. The blow is so devastating it craters the ground and leaves the prodigy laid out, coughing up red from pure frustration. The MC stares at him coldly and notes the little rogue is surprisingly stubborn. Gaia screams, blinded by rage and his bruised ego, insisting he is incredibly strong and refusing to accept defeat no matter what. From up high, the woman in the black dress watches the brawl closely, analyzing Riot's creation skill. Her eyes narrow as she picks up the fine details of the kid's footwork, suspecting that legendary combat style belongs to someone she has met a long time ago. Completely out of his mind, Gaia propels himself for one last desperate attack, swearing that he will prove his true worth once and for all. Gaia advances at an impressive speed, unleashing a sequence of rapid strikes that cross the air with an intense glow. Riot carefully watches the charge and notices that the opponent is getting even faster with each passing second. The prodigy boy quickly approaches with his sharp claws, trying to break the MC's defense by any means necessary. With a smile full of pointy teeth, Gaia celebrates prematurely, thinking he finally managed to catch his opponent. However, Ryot blocks the violent kick using a blue magic shield right in front of him, leaving the boy completely surprised. With complete calmness, the warrior looks at his adversary and comments that he is still way too young to claim victory ahead of time. He makes sure to remind him that there is always someone stronger in the world and that he is about to show him that in practice. While watching from afar, Noise Hamon notices Riot's magic tool creation skill and begins to suspect that familiar fighting style. Instead of being intimidated, Gaia flashes an insane smile and praises his opponent's strength, mockingly calling him Big Bro. The young prodigy does a backflip and excitedly reveals that he now wants to take Ryot down, for real. Keeping his cool, Ryot replies that with a personality like that, the boy will probably end up defeated at a very young age. Annoyed by the lecture, Gaia tells the warrior to shut up and charges again against the blue magic barrier with a powerful kick. The little assassin furiously yells that he hates nosy people who try to teach him moral lessons. He strikes the ground with all his might, destroying the arena and kicking up rocks around Ryot's unshakable defense. Gaia keeps moving agilely around the scene while the MC keeps his barrier activated to contain the attacks. Ryot then pushes his glowing shield forward, preparing to launch a devastating counterattack. A powerful wave of energy is released from the barrier, pushing Gaia away and making him slide across the destroyed arena floor. Even after being thrown back, the boy lets out a hysterical laugh of pure pleasure upon realizing he has found a rival on his level. Riot starts channeling his mana to create another weapon and invites the young prodigy to fight seriously once and for all. Gaia appears in the blink of an eye right in front of Riot's face, insanely lunging at his opponent. Suddenly, the giant shadow of a serpent appears behind them, accompanied by an imposing voice telling the boy to stop. The powerful Noise Hamon, an elite assassin from the third seat of the S rank, steps in to interrupt the fight and warns Gaia not to get too carried away. Extremely annoyed, the young prodigy demands that she stay out of the combat, claiming that Riot is his exclusive prey. Noise glares at him coldly and laments that the boy is such a disobedient and difficult child to deal with. She decides the kid needs a little discipline and uses her giant serpent's tail to strike him violently, landing a brutal hit. As Gaia falls to the ground bruised, the woman smiles and says he should listen more carefully when his elders are speaking. Ryot just watches the scene in silence while the boy complains about the pain and punches the ground in pure anger. Gaia furiously gets up and yells for her to stop treating people like her personal toys while a light begins to heal his wounds. Noticing the magical glow, Ryot immediately realizes that the opponent has an impressive regeneration ability. The warrior looks thoughtful and starts to wonder if those two are even normal human beings. Noise turns to the MC and, with an intimidating look, asks if he would mind putting away his magic weapon if he doesn't want to meet his maker right there. Riot dispels his magic and acknowledges that the woman is much stronger than the boy, but decides he doesn't care about that as long as he can achieve his goal. The S-rank assassin takes a few steps toward him and asks if he is after something specific in the guild. She gets very close and whispers directly into Riot's ear, asking if his real goal is to gain access to the confidential archives library. With a mischievous smile, she claims that this is the only reason someone would focus so much on leveling up and offers to help him if he agrees to follow her orders. Suspicious of the sudden proposal, Ryot stares at her seriously and demands to know what her true intentions are behind this. Noise calmly explains that she also has her own goals to achieve within the organization and needs someone very obedient to help her. She approaches Riot from behind, touching his face as she whispers that she needs someone young, handsome, and strong. The woman gently touches his shoulder and murmurs that she needs a person with exactly his qualities. Riot subtly pulls away and sarcastically comments that the proposal sounds very tempting, but the price to pay for it is a bit frightening. Noise turns her back and warns him with a dangerous smile that he has every right to refuse, but guarantees she will do everything to ruin his plans if he decides not to cooperate. Next, she calls Gaia to leave, making the boy grumble in annoyance, saying she isn't his boss. Before leaving, Gaia points at Ryot and swears up and down that next time he will finish him off for sure. The MC watches the duo walk away and thinks to himself that this whole situation has become a huge hassle. However, he regains his focus and decides he will destroy any obstacle that gets in his way if it helps him find the client faster. 1 week passes since the admission test and the events at the guild arena. At the front desk, Mina is completely in disbelief and lets out a gasp of shock as she reviews the completed mission documents. She looks at a gigantic pile of paper stacked on the desk, unable to understand how that was even possible. With total coldness, Ryot confirms that he successfully finished absolutely all the missions she had given him. The receptionist starts sweating bullets from pure nervousness and points out that such a massive amount of work would normally take a regular assassin at least 2 years to complete. For a normal human being, it would be impossible to accomplish all this in just 7 days, but Wright's situation is quite different. He recalls that his artificial body doesn't need sleep or food and is completely immune to fatigue, allowing him to work infinitely more efficiently than any normal person. Mina flips through the reports with a cheerful smile, praising the young man's flawless work and assuring him that his promotion to D ranks is already more than guaranteed. Riot asks what is needed to rank up to C rank, and the receptionist explains that from this point on, he will need recommendations from elite members and to complete specific missions. However, she reveals that he has already received a recommendation from none other than the influential Noise Hamel. Mina then hands over a sealed black envelope and announces that the rookie has just received a special mission directly from the S rank. Upon opening the letter, the MC is faced with a direct elimination order targeting a D ranks adventurer. The receptionist comments in awe that receiving a personal recommendation from Noise is an absurd honor, making Riot question if it is really that unusual. Mina confirms it excitedly, explaining that Noise is the leader of the largest faction in the entire Ruin Table Guild. She highlights the importance of the event by reminding him that the last person the powerful assassin personally recruited was the prodigy Lord Gaia. The MC remembers Noise's enigmatic words about the mysterious plans she intended to carry out within the organization. He looks at the envelope with suspicion, trying to figure out what she is really planning to do by gathering such talented subordinates around her. Inside the envelope, Ryot finds a purple card with the words "kiss" or "bite" written in a flashy way. He reads the cryptic message warning that if he doesn't want to get bitten, he must offer a kiss in return. The scene then shifts to the outside of the imposing palace that houses the kingdom's official adventurer guild under a clear sunny sky. The main hall of the place is completely packed with adventurers chatting and drinking as they prepare for their jobs. Riot enters the main building and scans the room, confirming that he has finally arrived at the agreed meeting spot. He watches the intense bustling at the Adventurer Guild's reception while discreetly walking through the hall. The warrior reflects on how that public guild is one of the historical organizations left over from before the Great War, just like the shady Ruin Table. A friendly blonde young man approaches Ryo and asks if he is the adventurer named Ray, receiving a positive response. The young man cheerfully introduces himself as Alexis Sline, a D-rank swordsman and leader of the party known as the Steel Wings. He asks to be called just Alex as he shakes hands with the MC, who pretends to be an inexperienced rookie, looking for any advice he can get. With a warm smile, Alexis celebrates the new member joining, pointing out that people with the magic bag skill are extremely rare in the kingdom. Ryot gives a subtle smile and politely replies that he will keep the leader's expectations in mind during the job. The mentioned skill basically works as an isolated dimensional space that allows the user to carry and store various items without any weight. Although his true power is the creation of magic tools, the MC manages to perfectly mimic the effect of the magic bag using a dimensional item he created himself. The warrior's plan is exactly to use this disguise as a rookie porter to get close to his elimination target without raising suspicions. Alexis then turns around excitedly and gestures to introduce the other members who make up the exploration party. The leader introduces the young Carisha, a healer sent by the church, and the dark-haired guy in the back named Ein, in charge of scouting and distraction. The quiet cleric is officially identified as Carisha Noir, a D-rank priestess who prefers to keep a reserved posture. On the other hand, the young Einbot shows total hostility right off the bat, grumbling that he has zero interest in making friends with whatever rookie Alexis brings to the team. With a cold stare, the party's rogue makes it clear that they are only there to complete the mission, collect the payment, and disband the team right after. Alexis tries to calm things down by giving Ein a friendly hug and asking everyone to try and get along, which only makes his teammate even more irritated. Extremely bothered by the leader's physical closeness, Ein quickly reaches out and grabs a flower vase resting on a nearby table. Without any hesitation, the rogue throws all the water from the vase straight into Alexis's face and furiously yells at the swordsman to never touch him again. Carisha tries to hold her teammate back while Alexis wipes his face and laughs it off, apologizing for being terrible at reading the room, but Ein just tells him to shut up. Huiot watches this mess with his arms crossed, thinking that even though he has seen many adventurer parties, this team's level of disunity and lack of chemistry is surprising. The assassin reflects that he still doesn't know the real reason someone put a bounty on that man's head. However, he stares at the young Alexis Sline, who continues calmly drying his face with a handkerchief. Riot puts on a dark look and coldly determines that, for him to achieve his true goal of payback, Alexis will have to be taken down no matter what. The narrative flashes back 1 week, revealing Alexis standing in front of a table of mysterious projections underground, where he confirms hearing rumors about something valuable hidden in a dungeon. The swordsman guarantees with an ambitious smile that if the mission is left in his hands, he will do whatever it takes to secure the artifact. He greedily reveals that the goal of his search is the mythical item that the legendary Riot Burger left behind in the past. Back in the present, the party finally arrives at the dark entrance of an imposing stone dungeon to begin their exploration. In the middle of combat inside the ruins, Ein activates his special parry skill to completely nullify the charge of a hostile creature. A geometric barrier of yellow light materializes in front of the rogue, blocking the devastating punch of a massive stone golem. The monster's impact is successfully repelled by Ein's absolute defense, leaving the creature off balance and vulnerable to a counterattack. Taking advantage of the perfect opening, the young man leaps into the air with his dagger in hand, preparing to deliver a finishing blow from top to bottom. At the same time, the guy activates his deceive skill to project an illusion of himself and confuse the giant adversary's perception. Ein lets out a confident battle cry, pouring all his strength into the attack as he swears to shatter the mud golem once and for all. Ein lands a direct hit on the large opponent, creating a huge explosion of dust and stone chunks across the room. Under the force of the merciless attack, the mud golem ends up being completely destroyed and crumbles into pieces. With a cocky posture, the rogue celebrates the easy victory and points at the glowing magic stone that fell to the ground, saying they can now continue their run. Riot just watches the action in silence, thinking that all this effort was way too slow for the standards of a D-ranked dungeon. The MC reflects that in peaceful times like these, the overall skill level of adventurers has dropped quite a bit, while Carisha asks if Ein is hurt and gets a harsh reply from the rogue. Alexis picks up the golden crystal from the ground and calls for the guy acting as the party's porter. He holds out the glowing magic stone and asks Ray to put it inside the magic bag, which the disguised warrior promptly accepts. With a friendly smile, the party leader thanks him for the help and says the rookie's skill is extremely useful to them. Riot watches the blonde swordsman's back and reflects that taking down Alexis would be a very simple task, but he needs to plan things out so it looks like an accident, leaving no traces. The warrior reiterates that for his elimination plan to work without raising any suspicion, choosing the perfect moment will be crucial. Eventually, the team arrives in front of a gigantic door adorned with red symbols, and the leader announces that they have finally reached the boss room. As soon as the gates open, a colossal flame golem awakens in the center of the hall, exuding an intimidating and dangerous aura. Alexis points at the altar and recaps that the party's real mission isn't to defeat the boss, but rather to secure the treasure chest sitting at the back of the room. The wooden chest in question is heavily locked with thick chains and a padlock on a stone platform. The swordsman explains that inside that chest is a valuable magic item that will guarantee a rich and comfortable life for all of them for a long time. He turns to Riot with an excited smile and claims that if they can grab the chest quickly, they won't even need to fight the giant monster. Ein is completely outraged by the escape plan and yells that it is impossible to reach the treasure without defeating the boss first. He argues that the golem is completely blocking the path and that the creature's magical pressure is so overwhelming that anyone who steps into the combat area will be instantly wiped out. Alexis gives a sinister smile and agrees with the rogue's words, showing that he knows very well about the danger. He follows up by revealing that even the kingdom's largest adventurer guild had to retreat from this dungeon multiple times, leaving Ein shocked at the absurd difficulty of the challenge. Without showing any concern, Alexis takes a step forward and says everything is under control because he has a foolproof strategy up his sleeve. However, in a treacherous and extremely fast move, the leader draws his sword and delivers a cowardly strike straight at Kirish's chest. The healer is badly wounded as she widens her eyes, unable to understand the reason behind this sudden betrayal. The girl is violently thrown toward the boss arena while Ein screams her name in pure despair. The violence of the attack immediately draws the attention of the giant golem, which starts channeling its flames to crush the intruder. Ein desperately runs and manages to grab Kirisha just in time, narrowly dodging the monster's devastating punch that smashes the ground right behind them. With a sadistic and cold look, Alexis watches the scene from afar and comments with pleasure that the boss has finally awakened for combat. Holding the injured cleric in his arms, Ein furiously yells at the swordsman, but the villain tells him not to shout and explains that there is a secret hidden in that room. He coldly details that as long as someone is actively in combat against the dungeon boss, a secret alternative route opens up for the rest. Right before their eyes, several stone platforms start emerging from the river of burning lava, revealing the safe path to the treasure. With a wicked smile, the swordsman explains that he will use this passage to grab the chest and complete the request without needing to break a sweat in combat. Ein grinds his teeth in pure rage upon realizing the leader had planned everything from the start and used his own teammate as disposable bait. Alexis lets out an insane laugh and shouts that commoners like them only exist to serve as stepping stones so nobles like him can have an easy life. Ein counters the provocation with disdain, saying that's a lot of arrogance coming from a fallen guy who lost his noble title and ended up in the dirt. The villain's smile vanishes instantly and, with a fierce glare, he tells the rogue to shut up and calls him filthy trash. He takes a step forward with his eyes glowing intimidatingly and whispers that he knows all about their little secret. The swordsman reveals that he is aware of all the activities considered sinful and impure that Ein and Kirisha had been doing in secret. The rogue is completely shocked and frozen upon realizing that his biggest secret was entirely exposed by the blackmailer. Alexis cruelly reminds him that a nun losing her purity is a massive taboo under the church's laws, and that, if he decides to report the case, punishment from the Inquisition will be unavoidable. With a demonic expression, he steps closer and reiterates that they both know very well what the Inquisitors would do to them if they found out the truth. The swordsman directly asks the trembling Kirisha about the harsh fate waiting for her, leaving the young cleric speechless and in tears. Out of his mind with anger, Ein grabs Alexis by the collar and yells that he is a miserable scumbag for resorting to such blackmail. The villain just mocks the guy's despair and asks if he really has time to worry about that, reminding him that whoever enters the arena becomes the boss's target until they are defeated. Next, he points behind him and shows that the massive flame golem has already locked its sights directly on the injured and defenseless healer. The colossal fire creature raises its blazing stone fist to deliver a crushing blow. The monster unleashes a devastating punch that hits the ground with brutal force, causing an explosion of flames and smoke that consumes the area. Amidst the fire and dust, Ein tries to protect the cleric with his own body and desperately asks if she can still move. Suddenly, the rogue looks up in terror upon realizing that a huge rock dislodged from the ceiling is falling right toward them. Ein grinds his teeth and curses his own powerlessness, knowing he won't have time to dodge, and braces for the worst. Alexis completely ignores the explosion and says with indifference that the two idiots will have to fend for themselves to survive. He gestures for the MC to keep moving forward and orders him to go secure the treasure chest as quickly as possible. The swordsman emphasizes that if the two in the arena fall in battle, the secret route will close immediately, and they need to grab the item before that happens. With a conspiratorial look, the villain says he doesn't know exactly what is inside the chest, but guarantees that with Ray's special skill, it won't be a problem. Riot remains in absolute silence, just staring at his teammate with an extremely cold gaze. The warrior mentally concludes that the man's cruelty perfectly justifies why there is a bounty on his head, while Alexis impatiently yells at him to hurry up. Riot decides to walk right past the leader and warns him that, regardless of what happened between them, he isn't enough of a monster to abandon allies on the brink of defeat. The young man walks with determination toward the combat arena, completely ignoring the leader's selfish orders. Alexis lets out a mocking laugh and makes fun of the guy's attitude, calling him dumb and reminding him that he is just a glorified baggage carrier who can't do anything. The villain assures him that Ray is just going to fall for nothing, but the MC gives a subtle smile and activates his magic tool creation skill. He instantly materializes an extremely bright giant sword called the Holy Sword Excalibur. With his eyes glowing brightly in blue, the legendary warrior firmly grips the handle of the gleaming weapon. Riot unleashes a single devastating strike with the Blade of Light, creating a massive wave of energy that slices the giant golem in half in the blink of an eye. The overwhelming display of power leaves Alexis, Ain, and Carisha completely paralyzed and terrified by what they just witnessed. As the Blade of Light dissipates into the air, the MC remains entirely calm, leaving the survivors baffled by that unbelievable strength. Ain and Carisha stare at the guy in extreme dread, unable to even formulate a question about his true identity. Riot takes out a pocket magic item and apologizes to both of them, coldly warning them that from that moment on, the area is strictly off-limits. He activates the Silence Perfume item, releasing a magic mist that makes the adventurer couple instantly collapse into a deep sleep. Alexis watches the scene shaking from head to toe as he realizes that the rookie defeated the terrifying dungeon monster with just a single strike. The swordsman points a trembling finger at the MC and desperately demands to know who or what he really is. With a calm and icy voice, the warrior reveals his true legendary name, Riot Burger. He stares directly at him with his eyes glowing red and declares that he is the man tasked with taking him out right then and there. The MC slowly advances under an aura of pure hostile intent that crushes any hope the adversary had of escaping. Alexis is completely paralyzed by the overwhelming pressure radiating from the legendary warrior. The swordsman tries to process the information and repeats Riot Burger's name in absolute disbelief. The villain lets out a nervous laugh and tries to pretend it's all a joke, saying a lowly rookie porter could never be that underworld legend. However, cold sweat drips down his face and he starts to suspect that Riot is also after the legendary mythical item. The MC is slightly surprised to hear the term and reacts with confusion at the mention of such an object. He asks where the swordsman heard about it, but Alexis interrupts him by laughing loudly and deducing that Ray only got close to him to steal the treasure. The swordsman greedily guarantees that this valuable artifact belongs exclusively to him by right. To silence his opponent, Riot unleashes a beam of blue energy that opens a crack in the floor right at Alexis's feet, scaring him. The warrior calmly walks past the leader toward the chest and announces that since he was the one who defeated the boss, he is the one who has the right to open the treasure. Grinding his teeth in pure rage, Alexis accuses him of cowardly hiding his mana the whole time just to steal the reward at the end of the run. Ignoring the insults, Riot breaks the chains and opens the wooden chest, only to find 4 flasks containing a glowing red liquid. He picks up one of the containers to examine it, and disappointedly realizes that it is just a common healing potion, not a real mythical item. The warrior deduces that Alexis was mistaken or that someone tricked him on purpose, but concludes that the person who passed on this fake info definitely knows about the existence of mythical items. An image of his arch-nemesis, the client, pops into his mind, making him strongly suspect that he is the one responsible for spreading these rumors. Without realizing the fake, Alexis celebrates upon seeing the glowing flask and comments that the mythical item is small enough to carry without needing magic bags. The swordsman orders the MC to hand over the flask immediately, but Riot shows a cunning smile and proposes they make a business deal. Alexis is completely confused by the unexpected offer and questions what the guy means by making a deal. The MC makes up a story that mythical items are priceless treasures and lies by saying he spent his entire fortune to get there, offering to sell the object if the leader pays a good price. The blonde guy angrily yells that he doesn't care about sad stories and demands the item be handed over to him no matter what. Overcome by greed, Alexis threatens to draw his sword and swears he will take the object by force if he refuses to cooperate. Wyatt just gives him a deadly glare and calmly reminds him that the swordsman has already seen with his own eyes what he is capable of doing. The leader hesitates instantly and pulls his arm back, gulping from sheer nervousness in the face of the silent threat. With his pride wounded, he gives in and dryly asks what the exact amount is that the guy is charging for the deal. Mockingly holding up one of the flasks, Ryot sets the price at 25 million per flask, totaling 100 million for all 4 potions. Alexis completely flips out upon hearing the absurd amount and yells that this sum would be enough to buy an entire luxury mansion in the kingdom's capital. With a sarcastic smile, Wyatt suggests he ask his employer to cover the costs, but then mocks him by saying that, judging by the type of henchman they hired, his boss probably isn't all that rich. With veins popping from pure rage, Alexis grinds his teeth furiously and demands that the MC stop making a fool out of him immediately. Alexis arrogantly yells that his true employer is the powerful Fire Dragon clan, and that 100 million coins is nothing but pocket change for them. Upon hearing the revelation, Ryot makes a mental note and realizes that this influential clan is the one truly responsible for feeding the classified intel to the traitor. The blonde swordsman demands that Ray hand over the magic potions first so they can talk later, and the MC pretends to accept the deal without hesitation. Very casually, the guy tosses 2 of the glowing flasks up into the air toward his teammate. Alexis stretches out and manages to catch the containers in midair with an expression of pure greed and satisfaction. He breaks into an insane smile and mocks the MC, screaming at the top of his lungs that Ray really is a complete idiot for believing him. The villain starts running away with the treasure, shouting that the item is his golden ticket back to nobility and that he would never hand it over to anyone. Riot stands perfectly still with his eyes glowing blue and calmly activates his lethal magic tool known as the pruning iron stakes. In that same second, the weapon's sharp, invisible wires wrap tightly around Alexis's entire body as he tries to flee. The traitor lets out a gasp of shock as he feels the cutting lines tear through his skin, leaving deep marks across his neck. Showing no mercy, the MC thinks to himself that the swordsman will never be a true noble again as the room bears the heavy marks of his defeat. Alexis's body is completely taken down and collapses on the dungeon floor, ending the traitor's run once and for all. Ryot just gives him an icy glare and concludes that his fate was sealed from the start as he came there exclusively to eliminate him. A short while later, Ein slowly begins to regain consciousness and lets out a groan of pain as he tries to figure out where he is. The MC approaches with a friendly posture, saying he is glad to see him awake and asking how his teammate is feeling. Still groggy from the sleep perfume's effect, the rogue remembers the danger and desperately calls out Carisha's name. He looks to the side and lets out a sigh of relief when he sees the priestess resting peacefully, leaning against a stone pillar. Ryot reassures him by explaining that the girl is perfectly fine, just sleeping, and that all of her severe injuries have already completely healed. Next, the warrior makes up a convenient lie, telling him with a fake tone of regret that Alexis ended up falling into a fatal trap and didn't make it. Ein stares at the aftermath on the floor in shock, trying to digest the news that the scumbag really ended up meeting his end in the dungeon. The MC adds to the story by saying the greedy leader tried to take the entire contents of the treasure chest all for himself. Still amazed by the events, the rogue comments that Ray is absurdly strong for managing to defeat the fearsome dungeon boss with a single attack. With an awkward smile, Ryot scratches his head and lies by saying he just threw some random magic tool at the golem and that it somehow worked out. Ein stares at him with a comical, disbelieving expression, totally unable to swallow the excuse that it all happened out of pure luck. The young man praises the MC, saying he is extremely lucky and a natural-born adventurer, and receives a polite thank you from Ray. Carisha starts to stir and lets out a soft murmur as she wakes up from her deep sleep. Ein happily supports her and celebrates that she is finally awake, while the priestess whispers his name under Ryot's watchful and silent gaze. Satisfied with the outcome, the MC suggests with a gentle smile that everyone start getting ready to head back to the surface together, The scene returns to the imposing adventurer guild in the capital, with the narration detailing that the youngsters went their separate ways right after reporting the mission's success. Riot watches the two walk away holding hands and reflects on how they kept their romantic relationship a secret to avoid breaking the church's rules. He recalls that the late Alexis found out the secret and started blackmailing Carisha to extort her and steal the party's mission rewards. With the villain out of the way, the MC sincerely wishes, from the bottom of his heart, that the couple can finally live in peace and be very happy. Walking through the sunny streets of the city, Riot makes his way back to the headquarters of his true, shady guild. Upon arriving at the ruin table, Mina happily welcomes him and congratulates the young man on his excellent performance in his promotion mission. She claps excitedly and comments that, as expected of him, the job was completed extremely quickly. The receptionist hands over the new documents and officially states that Ray has been promoted to key cranks, while the warrior immediately asks what the next job will be. Mina checks the orders and lets him know that, for the next task, he must personally accompany the powerful Lady Noise on a dungeon expedition. She adds that the mission seems to be directly related to a mysterious type of magic tool known as a mythical item. Hearing the revelation, Riot widens his eyes in shock upon noting that the term has popped up again, remembering that the existence of these relics was originally a strict secret kept only by the High Military Command. He concludes that the intel about these valuable items is being leaked by someone and decides he needs to speed up his search to find the client as soon as possible. The MC puts on a serious and determined look, knowing he needs to act fast before these legendary magic tools end up being used for evil purposes. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the main meeting room of the influential Fire Dragon Guild. The holographic projection of a bearded warrior complains angrily about Alexis's incompetence, calling him a useless fool for failing such a simple mission. A holographic woman counters by saying that at least now the young failure learned firsthand the real reason he was banished from his noble family. The leader asks about the whereabouts of the mythical item that was in the dungeon, and the ally replies that, as expected, the object was just a fake, claiming they wouldn't have such a hard time if they could find real relics just by following simple rumors. Another member at the holographic table points out that despite the failure, they cannot delay the progress of the organization's grand plan. An image of a colossal flaming black dragon is projected as the man explains that their ultimate goal is to plunge the world back into absolute chaos to ensure that the Fire Dragon Guild remains at the top forever. The leader asks the mysterious man at the head of the table if he agrees with the decisions, and the vice captain cynically answers yes. The projection reveals the wicked smile of Terrio, the vice captain of the Separate Knight Order, who supports the decision with total disregard for the consequences. Far away from there, in front of the frozen and gloomy entrance of the hidden Taurus dungeon, the powerful Noise Hammond waits patiently to kick off the new exploration run. Noise Hammond notices his arrival with a teasing smile and comments that he is quite late. She calls him a promising rookie, while the young man emerges imposingly amidst a strong, glowing energy. Upon seeing her, Ryo immediately recognizes that the woman is Noise Hammond, a fearsome S-rank hunter holding the second position in the guild. The legendary Noise Hammond stares at him with an air of superiority, keeping her arms confidently crossed. Riot walks across the frozen floor of the hidden dungeon boss room and complains that setting a meeting there with only a 1-hour notice is asking too much of anyone. She cynically disagrees and shoots back saying that if he were really taking this seriously, he would have gotten there much faster. The MC looks at her seriously and questions what makes her so sure of that. Noise simply answers that she knows this because she has something in her hands to prove it. With an enigmatic smile, she throws the glowing crystal forward and says they are about to find out the truth. The bluish stone flies with precision and perfectly fits into a small crack in the massive ice wall. Instantly, the frozen structure begins to crack violently under a blinding flash of overwhelming energy. A colossal and monstrous creature awakens from its seal with a deafening roar right in front of the warrior. The terrifying monster charges fiercely, unleashing a devastating strike against the intruder. The brutal attack hits the ground with unbelievable destructive force, creating a massive explosion of dust and debris. However, Riot blocks the impact perfectly using his creation skill to materialize the Holy Shield Aegis, although he admits that the strength of a hidden dungeon boss is truly impressive. He reflects that his current body won't take any real damage, but admits that defeating that colossal beast is going to be Quite a hassle. The monster attacks again with fury, but the MC dodges by jumping high with extreme agility. As he evades along the ice walls, Ryo asks if it is true that the reward for clearing that dungeon involves a mythical item. Noise lets out an amused chuckle and shamelessly confesses that it was just a lie she made up to convince him to come out there. The warrior is outraged to hear such an absurd revelation in the middle of such dangerous combat. At that moment, the massive ice creature delivers another violent blow that forces the guy to quickly defend himself in midair. After landing safely, he hears Noise comment that he seems to know very well what mythical items are. She stares at him with bright, mysterious eyes, showing huge interest in the knowledge the young man has about these relics. Ryot catches on to the woman's real intentions and bluntly asks if this whole thing is nothing more than a test to evaluate him. Instead of answering directly, she just mockingly warns him that he's going to end up defeated if he keeps taking his focus off the opponent. Right after, the colossal ice monster raises its massive weapon to unleash all its fury onto the MC. Wasting no time, the guy nimbly dodges and charges at the opponent at high speed. He then activates his creation technique and materializes the Scarlet Whip of Lamentation, while Noise closely watches his every move. The chains of reddish energy fly quickly and wrap tightly around the creature's horns. Next, the warrior uses his magic creation again to summon the colossal holy sword Excalibur. With a single ruthless motion, he swings the legendary sword down and effortlessly slices the monster in half. The powerful dungeon boss shatters entirely under the force of the attack, while the guy lands calmly under the woman's watchful eye. Noise looks at him, impressed, admitting she had hoped to measure his true strength in that fight, but failed. She realizes he won without even breaking a sweat, and that his immense hidden power remains completely beyond comprehension. Taking a few elegant steps on the ice, she comments in a teasing tone that the guy's strength is borderline scary. She steps closer with an ironic smile and mocks him, comparing him to a true demon pretending to be a normal human. The warrior finds the comparison funny and replies that it is a very peculiar way to describe him, but she insists she is right. She leans in even closer with a piercing look and states outright that, in truth, the guy is not a human being. To test her theory, the hunter manipulates her mana and instantly summons a menacing giant purple serpent. The terrifying snake lunges like lightning and stops mere millimeters from the MC's eyes, who doesn't even flinch at the threat. The guy remains completely motionless and unfazed before the beast's venomous fangs. Noise smiles victoriously, arguing that it is absolutely impossible for any normal human to lack any instinctive reaction to such a fast surprise attack. However, Rayat swats the serpent away with the tips of his fingers in a bored manner and makes up an excuse that he was just a little surprised by the speed of the attack. She pushes back, saying that makes no sense because any frightened person would try to dodge and would be unable to even avoid blinking as he did. The MC just stares at her in silence with a cold, impenetrable expression as the creature vanishes into smoke. Noise then reveals that she looked into his past and ended up finding a magic item shop that was completely destroyed by a recent fire. She adds that an old man lived isolated in that place with his young grandson, putting the warrior instantly on high alert. The woman mockingly laments that both were already gone by the time she arrived, but reveals she uncovered a crucial secret when examining their remains. She reveals with total certainty that the late old man from that shop was none other than the kingdom's legendary blacksmith. The revelation echoes impactfully as silence takes over the dungeon, making it clear she found out way more than she should have about the guy's past. Suddenly, the ice monster charges in with a powerful strike, but is instantly blocked by Noise's purple serpent. Clearly annoyed by the inconvenience, the hunter orders the creature not to interrupt their conversation so rudely. In that same second, the giant snake smashes the huge monster against the frozen rocks, easily neutralizing the threat. Ryot feigns complete indifference to the revelation and asks what that tragic fire story has to do with him. She smiles wickedly and explains she has a strong theory that the guy is, in fact, the creator of the legendary mythical items. Locking eyes with him, Noise firmly says the legendary warrior's true name out loud, Ryat Burger. She starts listing the reasons for her suspicion, pointing out that the young man possesses flawless combat skills similar to a veteran's, as well as a resilient body that doesn't burn even with glowing hot chains. The hunter notes that this theory of hers would be the only logical explanation to unravel all the mysteries surrounding him. As she slowly walks through the frozen cave, she teasingly questions if that underworld legend everyone thought was gone could have somehow come back to life. She flashes a victorious smile and confesses she simply cannot stop thinking that this is the only truth behind his secret. Stopping in her tracks, the woman looks back suggestively and asks him to confess the mystery once and for all. Burning with curiosity, she asks where he really came from and what his true origin is. Riot closes his eyes thoughtfully upon hearing the question about his past and his old life. A brief memory of intense battles and the warm smile of his beloved grandson quickly flashes through his mind. Right after, he remembers the dark silhouette of the one who took his grandson away, the fearsome client, causing his eyes to fill with a deep and silent determination. Regaining his cold and calculating posture, the warrior slowly opens his eyes to answer the hunter. He firmly extends his arm and coldly warns her that, unfortunately, he has absolutely no intention of answering that personal question. Meanwhile, the MC's thin magic lines extend and tightly wrap around the fading dungeon boss's body. The ice creature becomes completely immobilized and at the mercy of the warrior under Noise's watchful, silent observation. The guy raises his right hand to the sky and instantly activates his formidable magic tool creation skill. A massive amount of green energy materializes in the sky, taking the shape of the devastating holy hammer Mjolnir. The colossal ice monster lets out groans of agony as it takes a direct hit from the sacred weapon's violent electric shocks. Riyad takes on a frighteningly serious and icy expression as he raises his arm toward the woman. With a simple gesture, the giant holy hammer crashes down on the monster and completely pulverizes it in a fraction of a second. He shoots the hunter a threatening glare and warns her with a dark smile that, if she insists on meddling in his business, he won't hesitate to take her out too. The guy walks slowly, enveloped in pure hostility, and bluntly demands that she cooperate if she doesn't want to meet her end right there. He materializes a sharp blade of energy right at Noise's neck level, ordering her to shut up and play along with his goals from now on. He follows up on the threat by saying that if she decides to help him the easy way, he will make sure she is very well rewarded. Noise lets out a mocking laugh and gently pushes the tip of the sword away with her finger, teasing that threats don't work on her and pointing out that if he really wanted to eliminate her, he would have done it already. With a confident smile, she adds that she knows very well the warrior desperately needs her influence and power to manage to reach the S rank. Riot lowers his eyes slightly and admits that, to be more exact, what he really needs so urgently is crucial intel about a certain target. She breaks into a wide, wicked smile, confirming she already knows exactly what it is all about. Noise astutely states she knows the guy is desperately searching for clues about the identity of the culprit who took the life of his beloved family member. Riot seriously confirms and details that the culprit goes by the code name The Client, revealing that his strength easily surpasses that of an S-rank adventurer and that he has a distinct mark on his face. Noise thoughtfully repeats the information, trying to dig up any clue from her memories about someone who has a striking scar or facial mark. When asked if she knows anything, the hunter playfully dodges the question and warns him that she has no intention of giving up such a valuable secret for free, since she is no saint. The warrior narrows his eyes with hostility and asks if she is really refusing to cooperate with him. She quickly corrects herself with a teasing smile, saying she will gladly cooperate, but emphasizes that first, they need to make the master and servant dynamic between them very clear. Noise boldly steps closer, gently placing her hand on the guy's chest, and demands that he flawlessly complete all the missions and orders she gives him from now on. The MC lets out a mental sigh of pure irritation, finding this whole blackmail to be a massive annoyance he will have to deal with. She mocks his frustration and points out that his creation power is simply way too extraordinary to be wasted just like that. As they walk side by side out of the dungeon, the hunter concludes that their interests are perfectly aligned as he will do her jobs in exchange for clues about the culprit. With few viable options at the moment, the guide grudgingly accepts the proposal and strictly demands that she keeps her end of the promise. With a smile of pure satisfaction, she assures him she will honor the deal and suggests they return to the guild immediately so they don't waste any more time. While following him through the icy corridors, Noise reaffirms in her thoughts the absolute certainty that this mysterious young man is truly the legendary Rio Burger. A sinister smile appears on the hunter's face as she plans her next steps with that bombshell revelation in hand. She revels in the situation and mentally decides she will use the warrior's immense power to its absolute limit to achieve her own ambitious goals within the guild. A short time later, the scene shifts to the guild headquarters, where the guy finds himself in a luxurious room decorated with huge gold chandeliers and asks where they are. Noise introduces the place as her private office and proudly explains that all S-rank hunters are entitled to an exclusive private room. Riot just coldly nods and bluntly asks what the first task he must do for her will be. Noise tells the young man not to be in such a hurry and warns him she has some very special intel kept exclusively for him. She hands over a classified document containing a detailed investigation report on the members of the Veterans Association of the influential Fire Dragon clan. Upon reading the name of the Fire Dragon clan, Riot immediately remembers that it was this exact organization that fed the fake clues about mythical items to the late Alexis. The hunter explains that this Veterans Association is officially made up of retired adventurers and serves to provide financial support to the clan, but it hides much bigger secrets. She reveals that, according to recent rumors, the members of the shady group managed to get their hands on a real mythical item. Noise notes that an investigation mission was opened to look into the case, making the guy immediately question who the client responsible for issuing that request was. With an enigmatic smile, she reveals that the request came directly from the Royal Army, the old organization to which Riot belonged in the past and which had this valuable relic stolen from its vaults. The warrior asks which specific object was taken, but Noise answers that this information is classified and that the army plans to retrieve the relic on its own as soon as they find its whereabouts. The guy concludes that his task will be to investigate the Veterans Association, and she confirms, adding that since it's an absolute top-secret mission, the reward is generous and guarantees his immediate promotion to B ranks. Winking charmingly, she comments that this seems like an excellent deal for both of them. Riot coldly agrees, but points out that just reaching B rank is still far from his ultimate goal. As he leaves the room, the guy authoritatively demands that, before his next return, she already have a mission prepared that is enough to promote him directly to the coveted S rank. Walking down the luxurious hallways, the MC reflects that following the trail of these stolen mythical items is the best chance of finding the trace of his grandson's attacker. Clenching his fists with determination, he swears he will get his much-desired payback and stop the mystical relics from continuing to be used for evil purposes. He knows the journey will be long and tough, which is why he cannot afford to hesitate or stop on his path. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the bustling and imposing headquarters of the Fire Dragon clan. Suddenly, a mug of booze is slammed hard on the table by a furious female warrior who yells that they were completely played by a rotten old man. This is Hayyona, the clan's vice leader and an A-rank adventurer, who rants indignantly claiming that the dungeon classified as B rank, where they were, was, in fact, a dangerous S-level labyrinth. A gray-haired man next to her lets out a loud, laid-back laugh in the face of all that stress. The A-rank adventurer named Rex tries to calm her down with a playful smile and asks his teammate to take it easy for once. He points out that, thanks to her devastating strength in slicing up the dungeon boss, everyone managed to escape safely with rare and valuable materials, making the expedition a true success in the end. Hayyona shoots him a scowl and complains in annoyance that he is way too relaxed and carefree for his own good. At that point, young Dino, a B-rank adventurer with bangs covering his eyes, ironically comments that it was exactly because of that relaxed attitude that Rex ended up getting kicked out of his old S-rank party. Rex stands up furiously and tells the kid to shut up, yelling that he left the party of his own free will just so he could team up with the redhead. With a look of pure boredom, Hayyona confesses that if she had known about his terrible drinking habit beforehand, she probably never would have agreed to partner up with him. Suddenly, their conversation is cut short by the noise of a violent commotion breaking out right next to the group's table. Hayyona pulls Rex closer and seriously warns him that those old clan advisors are trying to eliminate the reformist members of the guild by any means necessary. She explains that the veterans' plan is to have them fall in dangerous dungeons to make it look like a tragic accident, which is the only plausible reason the recommended level of the labyrinth was altered on purpose. Dino adds to the conversation by revealing he heard recent rumors about an extremely suspicious and mysterious guy who has been secretly visiting the Veterans Association. The vice leader narrows her eyes with suspicion and murmurs that this whole situation is way beyond just being a mere suspicious coincidence. Fueled by anger, she clenches her fist and firmly declares that if the veterans really want them gone, the group should strike first to defend themselves. Rex tries to calm her down immediately, warning that this is a step too far and reminding her that, despite everything, the old men are still the respected founders of their very own clan. Dina realistically points out that they cannot act openly since they are S-rank adventurers and suggests that the best option would be to recruit new, powerful allies to strengthen the party. The teammates look at the young man in surprise upon hearing the suggestion to bring new people into the team. He details that they need someone who is flexible enough to accept new ideas and who has an unshakable sense of justice to never back down in the face of any kind of threat. The young man continues listing the necessary requirements for the ideal candidate when something catches his eye. He emphasizes that this new teammate would need to have absurd strength, being able to far surpass the power of an S-rank adventurer or the clan founders themselves. Hyona scoffs at the idea and questions if anyone with that profile even exists, pointing out that the clan's S-rank members only care about their own missions and ignore the guild's internal problems. Rex suggests recruiting someone from the outside, but Hyona warns that this would bring more enemies due to the shortage of talent, while a bully blocks Riot's path in the hall asking if the guy is just a useless rookie. Ignoring the bully in the background, the redhead ponders if they shouldn't just train a strong, helpful ally on their own. Meanwhile, another member mocks the boy, saying that the only people willing to follow him would be weirdos like Dino, provoking an irritated reaction from the kid. The vice leader turns around furiously, demanding they stop joking around and start suggesting ideas that would actually work to solve their problem. However, a deafening crash abruptly interrupts the group when a crushing blow is delivered right behind where they were sitting. Riot walks calmly, dusting off his hands, and boredly laments that abusive hazing against rookies seems to happen in absolutely every adventurer guild. The surrounding warriors watch the guy walk away completely shell-shocked, whispering fearfully about the newcomer's absurd strength. Hyona stands paralyzed with her mouth open as she witnesses that unbelievable scene unfold right before her very eyes. She widens her eyes in absolute shock, trying to process the speed and brutality of the move she just witnessed. The redhead realizes that even though she was keeping an eye on the young man for being a new face, she couldn't detect even the slightest trace of hostile intent or mana flow before the attack started. She admits in awe that she was completely unable to react to the strike and that she only realized what had happened when she saw the bullies flying through the air. Looking at the victims groaning in pain on the floor, Hyona notes in awe that the strike hit the opponent's vital points with surgical precision but was perfectly controlled to ensure none of them perished. Hyona breaks into an excited smile and concludes with absolute certainty that this mysterious guy possesses the power of an S-rank adventurer or even higher. She realizes that anyone else would have let that subtle detail go unnoticed and runs toward him, leaving Rex completely confused. Meanwhile, another bully in the hall tries to step up to Riot and furiously yells for the guy not to dare mess with them. The warrior simply keeps walking with an icy, indifferent look, totally ignoring the shouts of the man questioning where he thinks he is. Suddenly, Hyona appears like a flash right in front of him, blocking his path with an excited shout. She stares at him up close, with her eyes shining with excitement, and bluntly asks if he is interested in joining their clan. Riot looks at her with suspicion and silence, waiting to see where this sudden approach is going. Wasting no time, the redhead flashes a confident smile and invites him directly to join her own adventurer party. It all begins when Hyona, without wasting time, straight up asks why the young man doesn't join her adventurer party. Ray is a little confused by the sudden invite, but the redhead enthusiastically explains that they are looking for someone exactly as strong as him for the team. One of her teammates thinks it's a complete absurdity and questions the decision to invite a stranger, but Hyona tells him to shut up right on the spot. Pushing the annoyed guy aside, the vice leader turns back to the MC and asks what he thinks about the proposal of them teaming up. With a calm smile, Ray politely thanks her for the invite, but turns it down, saying he has zero interest in joining a permanent party. In his thoughts, the guy reflects that he isn't there to play adventurer and that he needs to vanish without a trace as soon as he finishes his secret mission, so the fewer people involved with him, the better. Hyona takes the rejection smoothly, although she heavily regrets that he prefers to keep flying completely solo. Even after the denial, she extends her hand in a very friendly manner and asks the guy to look her up if he ever needs anything in the future. The redhead finally introduces herself officially as Hyona, the vice leader of that renowned clan. Shaking her hand respectfully, the MC introduces himself using the codename Ray and says he will certainly count on her support when the time comes. The story then reveals that the Fire Dragon clan was founded many years ago by the legendary Meltonhild and Pilsner Hojak. These two legendary heroes made a name for themselves 40 years ago when they defeated the fearsome evil dragon known as Xerxale. Since its foundation, countless famous adventurers have rushed to join the group, but the one who stood out the most among them all was Dunkel Slane, the Fire Dragon Hunter. Back in the present, a luxurious carriage discreetly arrives at the gates of an imposing mansion during the night. Out of the vehicle steps Dunkel Slane himself, who now acts as an influential executive in the clan's Veterans Association. While the drivers and guards sort out the carriage outside, the quiet movement catches watchful eyes from the shadows. Watching everything hidden on a nearby rooftop, Ray remembers that this old man is the uncle of Alexis Sline, the traitor he himself eliminated, as well as being the only noble in the association. The guy recalls that, according to the investigations he did in the secret accounting books, almost all the money that funds the clan comes from nobles and passes directly through Dunkel. Based on this, the MC deduces that the old man was most likely the one responsible for revealing the existence of the valuable mythical items to the late Alexis. Ray starts tailing the vehicle discreetly, knowing that, unlike the other executives who live in isolation, this noble tends to move around a lot in public. This routine, full of public engagements, ends up making the old man a much easier target to investigate and keep an eye on for the warrior. After traversing the dark streets of the city, the carriage finally stops in front of a secondary entrance guarded by armed men. Dunkel calmly steps out of the vehicle and is received with deep reverence by a staff member who is anxiously waiting for him. From the top of a neighboring building, Ray strategically positions himself to keep a close watch on his target entering the establishment. By analyzing the facade and the discreet activity of the place, the MC immediately recognizes the kind of business being run inside. The place is, in fact, the VIP area of a luxurious underground casino filled with nobles and rich folks having fun, far from the eyes of the law. In a more secluded corner of the room, a mustached man happily tells the attendant that everything is going according to plan and that they have already managed to secure the mythical item. Sitting right across, a hooded man praises the excellent work, highlighting Dunkel's great efficiency in leading that operation. The mysterious hooded guy cracks a sinister smile under the shadows and murmurs that the time has come to take the next step. Through a small magic spider used to eavesdrop on the conversation, Ray hears the hooded man say that now all that's left is to execute the plan, which makes him question if that guy could be the true mastermind behind it all. The hooded man continues his complaint, pointing out that the world has gotten too peaceful ever since monsters were hunted to near extinction, which ended up ruining adventures, profits, and opportunities. Dunkel lets out a wicked smile and muses that trying to revive that legendary creature to solve this is a madness no one in their right mind would dare plan. The hooded figure coldly adjusts his glasses and replies that, for their interests, the greater the chaos caused in a kingdom, the better the financial return will be. The noble agrees with his business partner's cold logic, but still acts impressed by the sheer audacity of that absurd plan. From the rooftop, Ray listens carefully to every word transmitted by the device and realizes the situation is infinitely more dangerous than he imagined. Dunkel then wraps up his train of thought, making it very clear that the terrifying creature they intend to bring back to life is the dragon Xerxale. If this colossal monster is revived, its immense magical power will enrage all the beasts in the surrounding area, causing a flood of desperate pleas for help to overwhelm the Adventurer Guild. Dunkel pictures a rain of gold coins falling into his hands and celebrates that, when his clan steps in to resolve the crisis, they will earn brilliant glory and simply unimaginable wealth. The hooded ally fully agrees and states that the resurgence of this legend from the past will guide the Fire Dragon clan towards a new, prosperous golden age. Listening to everything through the receiver, Ray hears the noble confess with extreme greed that his heart starts racing just thinking about all the power they are about to conquer. The MC turns completely serious upon hearing the dragon's name and begins to analyze the crucial information he possesses about the creature. He remembers that 40 years ago, he himself neutralized Zaruxiel using mythical relics, and that the official story about the adventurers defeating the beast was just a lie made up by the royal army to seal it away in secret under the capital. Ray remembers the two artifacts used back then in detail. One being the desert's wither, which drains the target's moisture, and the other the gourd of magic calling, which seals the power inside a stone. The guy realizes that if the villains manage to reverse the effects of this pair of mythical items, they will be able to awaken the dragon and turn the entire royal capital into a complete sea of flames. Aware of the colossal catastrophe this would cause to thousands of innocent people, the warrior puts on a determined expression and swears to stop this evil plan at all costs. Suddenly, the audio brings Dungle asking what a certain important person had to say about this whole conspiracy, which instantly sparks Ray's curiosity about who this new accomplice could be. The hooded man quickly changes the subject, ensuring that the matter is entirely under his responsibility and that there is absolutely no reason for concern. However, the villain abruptly changes his tone and asks if Dunkel isn't also feeling a very strange presence nearby, leaving the noble shocked at the possibility of being spied on. The mysterious man starts looking around the room, murmuring that the energy he is sensing is too subtle to belong to an ordinary human being. In a fraction of a second, a strike of energy slices through the air and completely destroys the small device Ray was using to listen in on the criminal's conversation. The broken pieces of the small metal spider fall coldly to the ground, confirming that the spy gadget was destroyed. The hooded man walks over to the debris and mutters in surprise upon noticing it was a spy spider. The enemy analyzes the remains and deduces it was some kind of disguised listing mechanism, leaving Ray impressed with that guy's level of perception. The MC realizes the opponent is extremely cunning, since his magic item was designed specifically to hide any trace of mana to the absolute limit. Since he can no longer rely on long-distance surveillance, Ray regrets not being able to extract more details from the conversation, but accepts that there's no other choice but to act directly. With a serious look under the light of the full moon, the guy decides he will need to infiltrate the place personally to uncover the whole truth. Meanwhile, in the underground casino's main hall, the patrons keep betting high and having fun without suspecting absolutely anything. Walking in disguise through the casino crowd, Ray wonders how the villains intend to control the actions of the terrifying dragon Zaruxiel after bringing it back to life. Suddenly, the warrior senses a familiar presence approaching rapidly and discreetly looks away to avoid drawing attention. The guy's memories trigger immediately upon recognizing that striking red hair even under a bold waitress disguise. Noticing it is Hyona, Ray starts to wonder if she might also be involved in the Veterans Association's mysterious conspiracy. Driven by the doubt that she might be the accomplice Dunkel mentioned, the guy decides to act quickly to get to the bottom of this story. With extremely fast and precise movements, the MC approaches the young woman without making a single sound to catch her by surprise. He pulls her into a secluded corner and pins her firmly against the wall, drawing a gasp of pure shock from the vice leader. The guy stares at her with a serious and intimidating look, expecting to get quick answers without any runaround. Iona widens her eyes in shock upon recognizing the strong young man from earlier and fearfully asks what he is doing in a place like that. Ray coldly throws the question right back, asking why the vice leader of a major clan is working undercover in a secret casino. The redhead looks away, visibly embarrassed by the awkward situation she just got caught in by the rookie. The MC teasingly asks if she is really working as a waitress, making the young woman blush with embarrassment right on the spot. She desperately begs him to keep this an absolute secret, claiming she has very serious reasons for being there. In her thoughts, Hyona considers that she could never reveal to a mere rookie that she infiltrated the casino to investigate the corrupt veterans. Ray just murmurs that he understands the situation, though in his mind he has already deciphered the whole mystery behind her actions. Remembering the conversation he overheard earlier at the guild, the guy immediately concludes that her goal in there is exactly the same as his. Determined to use the situation to his advantage, the warrior places his hand on the wall right next to the redhead's face, making her even more tense. He leans in close and asks if the invitation she made earlier for him to join her adventure party is still on the table. Surprised by the sudden attitude, the young woman questions if he is really referring to the team proposal, and the guy confirms it seriously. Ray points out she didn't dress up like that for nothing, and that her real target is the intel on the men gathered in the back room. The guy reveals that Dunkel is meeting with the mysterious accomplice at this exact moment and offers to tell her everything they are planning if she helps him flush them out of there. Totally shocked by the revelation, the redhead tries to understand how a newcomer knows so much about such a secret conspiracy. Despite her doubts, she decides to put the questions aside and accepts the partnership, as she desperately needs evidence against the veteran. She confesses she still doesn't fully trust him, but admits she can see in his face that he isn't a bad person. With a confident smile, she proudly adds that she isn't the clan's vice leader for nothing and knows very well how to handle these situations. Relieved not to have to give long explanations, Ray thanks the hunter for her quick and practical cooperation. Wasting no time, the MC asks the young woman to start a riot in the main hall to force the criminals out of the private room. With a mischievous smile, the redhead replies she already has the perfect tool to create a monumental mess in the establishment. Ray gets a little intrigued seeing the young woman pull an unusual object from her disguise. He realizes in surprise that it is a military radio communicator she kept hidden on her the whole time. Moments later, the sound of heavy, coordinated footsteps from many men begins to echo strongly through the casino's corridors. Suddenly, armed soldiers storm the main hall, ordering that no one dare move and that everyone throw their hands in the air. The gamblers go into absolute panic as they realize the royal army is carrying out a surprise raid on the underground spot. The commanding officer loudly declares they received an anonymous tip about illegal gambling and that everyone there will be detained for questioning. The soldier strictly warns that any escape attempt or suspicious behavior will be neutralized with full force immediately. Hiding in the shadows, next to the redhead, Ray confesses that he didn't expect her to involve the royal army, and she brags, saying she has great connections in high places. Hyona confidently adds that the entire perimeter of the building is surrounded, making any escape route impossible for those involved. However, the Prota is suspicious of how easy it seems and warns that criminals of that caliber always have a well-planned emergency escape route. And the warrior's intuition proves right because at that very moment, Dunkel and his accomplice are already running desperately through an underground sewer. The hooded man complains crossly that he can't believe the army located them, accusing the noble of getting sloppy with security. Dunkel fumed angrily that he paid incredibly high bribes to guarantee the protection of the place and has absolutely no idea what could have gone wrong. The hooded ally suggests they split up right then and there to lower the risks of being captured, agreeing to meet at their usual hideout. As he runs alone through the dark tunnels, the hooded man begins to think this sudden raid is a bit too convenient to be just a coincidence. Climbing up an exit ladder, the hooded man reflects that the mysterious presence he felt earlier confirms they were indeed being watched, but he doubts it was the army's doing. He pushes open a discreet wooden door and steps out into a dark, quiet alley in the city to throw off any pursuers. Regardless of who the spy is, the villain knows there is a high chance that crucial details of the plan have leaked to a third party. Knowing he has no time to waste on distractions, he decides to speed up the plan to revive the dragon as quickly as possible. However, as he rushes under the moonlight, a flame suddenly appears, floating right behind him in the dark alley. The hooded man turns around startled as he feels the heat of the fire, only to be caught off guard by a swift attack from the darkness. Dodging the danger, he realizes the fire actually came from a torch thrown on purpose to reveal his exact location. In the blink of an eye, Ray emerges from the shadows, launching a devastating surprise strike against his opponent. The Proto lands silently on the ground after his initial attack is blocked at the very last second by the target. Without giving his opponent a single moment to breathe, Ray presses forward and delivers a crushing kick that sends the villain flying back with extreme force. The hooded man grinds his teeth in pure frustration as he feels the violent impact of the physical blow he just received out of nowhere. He slides several yards across the stone floor before managing to stabilize his posture and halt his momentum. Ray walks calmly toward his opponent, his mysterious presence looming amidst the rising dust. Adjusting his glasses, the villain is shocked by the power of that kick, reasoning that a simple army scout could never possess such physical strength. Realizing he isn't dealing with an ordinary soldier, the hooded man directly asks what the young man wants from him. Ray coldly responds that he only has a few questions and demands to know the details of the secret meeting the man just had with Dunkel. The villain breaks into a mocking smirk upon realizing that this mysterious youth was the rat responsible for spying on them with the magic spider. Unsheathing a gleaming blade, he disdainfully declares that he is under no obligation to answer any of the boy's questions. Letting out a confident laugh, the enemy charges at high speed toward the Proto to finish him off once and for all. The assassin activates a special technique to instantly vanish from the warrior's sight before impact. Seeing the enemy submerge completely into the darkness using the shadow dive skill, Ray is temporarily caught off guard. The villain suddenly resurfaces right behind Ray, stepping directly out of his own shadow to deliver a decisive blow from behind. Ray senses the danger just in time and reacts instantly to the silent strike coming from within the shadows. With superhuman reflexes, the Proto masterfully blocks the treacherous attack, creating a massive clash of energy between their weapons. The hooded man is left in absolute shock as he sees his blade caught and bound by a glowing red magical chain. Ray recognizes the shadow dive as an excellent technique for assassins, but reveals he was already prepared for it as he summons his Scarlet Whip of Lamentation. Impressed by the block, the villain praises the boy's skill before retreating back into the alley's shadows. Deciding to switch tactics, the assassin summons several sharp daggers that begin to hover menacingly in the air around him. In the blink of an eye, the floating weapons surround the Proto, ready to strike him from every possible direction at once. Staying perfectly cool, Ray simply spins his whip at high speed, creating an impenetrable barrier that repels every single blade flying his way. The assassin's eyes widen in disbelief that his coordinated dagger attack was deflected so easily and effortlessly. He notices the boy is using that same red whip to block the projectiles and thinks his opponent is just flexing to humiliate him. The villain narrows his eyes with hostility, realizing that simple throwing tricks won't be enough to eat and scratch the warrior. The enemy analyzes Ray's imposing stance and concludes that this young man is used to completely overwhelming his opponents with crushing power. With a sinister smile, the assassin realizes he won't stand a single chance of winning if he keeps holding back his combat techniques. He lets out a creepy laugh as a dense, dark aura begins to emanate from his entire body to boost his stats. Unsheathing two imposing long swords, he reveals that he hasn't needed to fight at full strength since his last major clash in the past. Ray watches the enemy's new stance with total calmness, identifying that this dual sword style is the opponent's true way of fighting. The assassin lunges forward with power, preparing to unleash a swift dash with his long swords. He shouts furiously that now that the boy has seen his true style, he will never escape this place, charging forward like lightning cutting through the darkness. With his eyes glowing intensely, Ray fully concentrates to take on the dangerous assassin's next strike. The violent impact between the villain's swords and Ray's block makes the alley shake, generating a massive explosion of bright sparks. The Proto realizes that the reach of the enemy's strikes is massive, and that the attack radius is much wider than it physically appears. The two warriors begin exchanging fierce, rapid attacks, their blades cutting through the air and creating blue and green flashes in the darkness of the alley. Completely pumped by the adrenaline of battle, the assassin taunts Ray, shouting that the real fight is just getting started. Ray assesses his opponent's movements and notes that wielding two heavy long swords like that requires an absolutely insane amount of physical strength. The Proto considers dragging out the fight to wear his opponent down, but decides he needs to wrap things up as quickly as possible so he doesn't lose Dunkel's trail. Determined to end the fight, Ray activates his magic creation skill to summon the iron pruning stakes, scattering indestructible sharp threads all over the area. The villain finds himself completely cornered upon noticing the mana-infused threads around him and snaps angrily at the boy's trickery. The Proto stares back coldly, pointing out that a skilled warrior like him should be able to spot the deadly danger of those threads with just a single glance. Ray predicts that Terio's next move to close the distance between them will be to activate his shadow dive skill once again. However, as he tries to submerge into the darkness, the villain ends up colliding directly with the sharp threads Ray had strategically placed throughout the alley. Terio panics as he realizes there are sharp cables right behind him too, understanding that the Proto perfectly anticipated his every move. Ray gives a slight smirk, pointing out that his opponent walks straight into his trap by relying way too much on his own special skills. The villain clicks his tongue, annoyed by the boy's boldness, and warns him that he is celebrating too soon as he still has a trump card up his sleeve. He holds up an ancient golden bell and crazily proclaims that he is going to turn the warrior into his newest, obedient puppet. Ray fixes his gaze on the mysterious object with total indifference, maintaining a completely calm and unbothered posture. As soon as the bell begins to ring, its distinct sound instantly triggers old memories the Proto kept regarding that dangerous artifact. He recalls when he investigated incidents related to brainwashing and memory theft that plagued the population in the past. Suddenly, the young man burst into a loud, relaxed laugh, leaving Terrio completely confused and irritated, unable to understand what could be so funny at such a serious moment. Ray smirks and reveals that he has finally found what he was looking for after hunting down clues and tracking every incident involving mythical items all the way here. With his eyes gleaming with determination, he celebrates internally for finally finding the first solid lead that will take him to the culprit known by the codename The Client. The warrior remembers his long, grueling investigation journey, driven by a desire for justice to corner everyone involved. Ray feels that his desire for justice is closer than ever to being fulfilled now that the trail of the person responsible for his grandson's demise has been uncovered. Completely oblivious to the young man's thoughts, Terrio mockingly asks if he truly believes he has already won this tough battle. He rings the bell forcefully and warns that such arrogance will be the boy's downfall as soon as the mind manipulation spell takes effect. The magical sound waves from the bell begin to spread through the alley, glowing in multicolored hues of pure hypnotic energy. With a victorious smile on his face, the villain orders the Proto to immediately reveal who he is and what his true goal is here. To the enemy's utter disappointment, Ray simply offers a calm smile and lets him know that the mind trick had absolutely no effect on his body. Terrio is left in absolute shock upon realizing that his target's mind remains completely intact, stammering as he fails to comprehend what went wrong. Ray then reveals that the spell is useless against him for the simple fact that he himself was the original creator of that exact magic nullifying item. The scene shows a brief flashback of the Proto in his magical tool laboratory well before he even began his infiltration into the clan. On that day, the young man received extremely rare materials from his research partner so he could craft new elite gear. With the materials in hand, Ray planned to create a perfect magical device capable of efficiently neutralizing any external mana interference. This artifact, which he forged with such great care, would serve as the absolute countermeasure to negate the dreaded echo of memory skill. The device, called wave cancellation, works by emitting an inverse frequency that completely neutralizes the mana applied by the opponent nearby. Terrio stares at the young man, completely frozen in terror, realizing that a mythic-grade item was entirely neutralized right before his eyes by pure genius. Taking a cautious step back, the villain admits in his thoughts that this opponent's strength far exceeds all his expectations. Seeing that he stands no chance in a direct confrontation, the assassin uses his last drop of energy to submerge back into the dark puddle beneath his feet and flee the scene. Ray watches his opponents escape closely and concludes that as long as the enemy touches any part of his body to the ground, he can glide through the shadows of the environment. Terrio's mocking voice echoes through the surrounding darkness, admitting from afar that the young man has truly managed to catch his interest. Beneath the dark mist, the villain smirks and suggests they change the rules of the game to something a bit more fun and creative. Instead of attacking Ray directly, he delivers a devastating sword strike against the structure of a nearby residential building, causing everything to come crashing down. The violent impact destroys the wall of a house and leaves a female civilian completely panicked on the ground as debris rains down on her. Ray's eyes widen in shock as he notices the presence of a helpless civilian in the middle of all that intentional destruction. With great malice, Terrio celebrates that the real puppet show is about to begin under the command of his magical bell. Several innocent civilians with glowing red eyes walk into the alley completely controlled by the villain's hypnotic spell to serve as shields. Terrio laughingly orders his new little soldiers to advance all at once to pin down and corner the Proto without mercy. The hypnotized civilians run toward Ray without any hesitation, wielding sharp kitchen utensils to attack him. Skillfully dodging each lunge without harming the victims, Ray crossly laments that villains always use innocent people as shields to do their dirty work. Terrio emerges with open arms from the dark mist and mockingly asks if the young man hates the tough spot he finds himself in. He asks if the warrior feels guilty, seeing that his own heroic investigation efforts are putting other people's lives in extreme danger. Taking advantage of the boy's hesitation to attack the hostages, the villain swiftly advances from behind the civilians to land a precise slash. Terrio unleashes a ruthless lunge with his long swords, claiming that those who hesitate before human shields can't even protect themselves. Ray realizes that if he dodges Terrio's strike, the blade will cut right into the helpless civilian positioned right behind his back. Without a second thought, the Prota throws himself in front to take the terrible physical attack and protect the innocent victim's life. Terrio flashes a sadistic smile upon seeing his heavy blade finally hit Ray's body with full force in the middle of the alley. The devastating impact of the sword strike generates a wave of cutting wind that destroys part of the dirt street around the combatants. However, as he pulls his weapons back, the villain is puzzled to notice that he didn't feel the sensation of cutting through flesh, despite being certain he hit the young man dead on. Emerging unharmed from under the debris with only a slight scratch on his face, Ray jokes that his body is just a bit tougher than that of most ordinary people. Terrio finds the boy's resilience fascinating, but sadistically wonders just how much that tough body will be able to take from his physical attacks. He orders the hypnotized civilians to charge all at once, forcing the Prota to step back to deal with the wild crowd. Ray mutters in annoyance that the villain loves using human shields, but warns that he won't let him have his way any longer. With his magic creation skill, Ray materializes and spreads the perfume of silence, a magical mist capable of making anyone who breathes it fall asleep on the spot. Seeing his pawns drop unconscious and sleep peacefully on the ground, Terrio falls into complete despair. Without giving his opponent any time to react, Ray appears like lightning right in front of him and lands a devastating punch dead on. The warrior immediately uses his magical techniques to firmly bind and immobilize the defeated assassin on the ground. Cornered and completely bound by indestructible magical threads, Terrio lets out a groan of pure frustration and pain upon being defeated. Ray picks up the villain's golden bell and coldly declares that his little puppet show has come to an end. While the assassin trembles in fear, Ray warns that now it's his turn to set the rules and ask the necessary questions. With an extremely menacing look, the Prota demands that he reveal the whole truth about his real master and mastermind. The young man also wants to know the real reason they are gathering the legendary mythical items, making Terrio scream in agony under such intense psychological pressure. Completely broken and without the strength to resist, the villain kneels in defeat under the warrior's cold gaze. With his head bowed, he begins to confess that the true goal of his secret organization is to bring about absolute anarchy and chaos throughout the kingdom. Terrio darkly reveals that their ultimate plan is to use the sacred relics to trigger a devastating and unprecedented war across the entire continent. Ray is surprised to hear about a large-scale war, commenting that he thought they only wanted to resurrect the evil dragon Zerexale. The assassin laughs and explains that they used the greed of the Fire Dragon clan veterans merely as a smokescreen to achieve their goals without leaving a trace. The Prota then directly asks if they were the ones responsible for the recent theft of the mythical item that was under the guard of the royal army. With a malicious glint in his eye, the villain simply confirms his role in the crime with total shamelessness. He reveals that the demon's calling gourd has already been taken back to its final destination. The relic has already been strategically positioned at the exact spot where the ancient seal trapping the dragon rests. Terrio triumphantly warns that as soon as the correct signal is sent, the beast's resurrection process will begin instantly. Ray recalls that in the past, he used the demon's calling gourd and the dry desert spring together to completely suppress and seal the terrible dragon's mana and physical body. The Prota analyzes that since they are paired relics, breaking only one of the seals will cause the dragon to awaken in a completely incomplete and unstable state. With a sadistic smirk, the villain adds that this is exactly what they want, as the enraged creature will launch into blind destruction across the entire kingdom. Furious at such cruelty, Ray calls out his opponent for doing that, knowing the casualties it would cause, but Terrio just laughs, claiming it's all for the glory of his master. With an insane and fanatical look, he bellows that he doesn't care at all about the fate of the capital or the innocent lives that will be lost in the process. Hearing the assassin's maniacal laughter, the Proto mutters in disgust that he is dealing with a completely deranged fanatic. Meanwhile, at another quiet spot in the city, the darkness of the night seems to hide even more terrible secrets. Panting and terrified, the noble Ayuncle Slain walks hurriedly through the narrow streets, thinking he had managed to throw off his pursuers and escape safely. Suddenly, his path is abruptly blocked by Hyona, who calls his name firmly and with authority in the middle of the street. Pointing her gleaming sword, the vice leader declares that she has already uncovered all of his corrupt schemes and orders the old man to surrender immediately without a fight. The noble lets out a sarcastic laugh with open arms and mocks the young woman, calling her an inexperienced brat who understands nothing about the real world. He tries to hypocritically justify himself, claiming that the success of his personal plans is what guarantees the prosperity and future of the entire Fire Dragon clan. With an expression of pure madness, the old man tightly grips the magical activator in his hands and yells for her not to dare stand in his way. He presses the runic device with full force, sending the definitive magical activation signal to the seal. A colossal and bright magical explosion erupts in the distance, lighting up the night sky and greatly startling the red-haired warrior. Hyona's eyes widen as she senses the devastating mana signature, realizing with dread that this is far worse than a simple, ordinary detonation. The corrupt noble shouts victoriously that now she won't have the luxury of worrying about him as the evil dragon's colossal claw begins to break through the city's ground. Under the terrified gaze of those present, the terrible creature resurfaces roaring in fury, ready to turn the entire royal capital into a sea of blazing flames. The legendary dragon lets out a deafening roar that echoes for miles as it readies its devastating fire breath in its throat. Hyona falls into utter despair, witnessing the impending catastrophe, while the old man Ayuncle laughs victoriously with open arms in the background. However, Rei appears leaping across the rooftops and begins to gather an immense amount of energy around the giant monster. Both the noble and the vice leader look up in shock as they feel that sudden manifestation of unbelievable magical power coming from above. Activating his magic creation technique, the Proto materializes the Monocannon, a colossal weapon designed to fire projectiles of pure concentrated energy. Rei glances at the defeated villain and warns that although he has a mountain of questions to ask, the interrogation will have to wait a bit due to the urgency of the situation. With the mana cannon charged and glowing intensely in his hands, the young man calmly declares that first, they need to take down a legendary dragon. The imposing dragon Zerixel roars menacingly in the face of all the destruction it caused in the city center. Strategically positioned at the top of a stone tower, Rei faces the colossal fire-breathing beast without showing the slightest sign of hesitation. With the wind blowing hard and ashes falling around him, the legendary warrior prepares to fight the ultimate battle that will decide the fate of the entire kingdom. It all begins with a violent explosion of magical energy that erupts in the middle of the night. Rei closely observes the dragon that has just resurfaced in an incomplete and unstable state, releasing an absurd amount of magical power due to being forced into a fragile vessel. Just then, Hyona comes running and calling for her companion, who immediately asks what she did with the corrupt Dunkel. The vice leader answers that she gave him a good beating and left him tightly tied up in the basement, ensuring the traitor won't be waking up anytime soon. She quickly changes the subject and asks in surprise if that devastating attack from a moment ago was really Rei's doing, praising his impressive firepower. Rei confirms this and explains that he used a projectile of condensed mana with the goal of taking off the monster's head, but the plan didn't go as expected. The attack ended up being blocked before it could even hit the colossal creature's scaly skin. He realizes that all that immense magical energy overflowing from the dragon is acting as an almost impenetrable protective barrier. Hyona is left completely incredulous upon hearing that, but the Proto quickly interrupts her to warn that the enemy is already preparing to attack again. The dragon opens its giant mouth wide, concentrating a massive amount of destructive energy in its throat. Next, it fires a colossal and devastating beam of light that cuts through the sky toward the city. The energy beam hits the ground and generates an explosion of catastrophic proportions that sweeps away everything in its path. In the face of the violent impact of the shockwave, Rei acts fast and pulls Hayona to protect her from the impending danger. Looking to the side after the impact, the red-haired warrior falls into despair, hardly able to believe the destruction. She is shocked to realize that just one single blow from the monster was enough to tear open a gigantic crater and lay waste to the entire region. Rei holds her firmly by the arm and sharply warns her that she can't just freeze up right in the middle of combat. The two quickly leap to dodge another violent charge from the beast that flings massive debris in all directions. As soon as they land safely, the legendary warrior orders her to fully focus on the clash. He seriously warns that any small slip-up in front of a threat of this level will mean their immediate demise. While the dragon continues its deafening rampage, civilians run desperately through the streets, trying to escape the destruction. Elsewhere, some innocent people end up being hit dead-on by the beast's overwhelming power. While the chaos spreads, a mysterious and elegant man calmly observes all the destruction from high up on a balcony. He merely contemplates the apocalyptic scene in total silence, showing not the slightest concern about what is happening. In the center of the battle, buildings collapse and the population panics completely as they try to flee the terrible fire. Seeing the capital consumed by flames, Hyona desperately laments the city's tragic fate. She asks indignantly where the kingdom's army is and what the knights are doing, but Rei explains that a military mobilization of this size takes time to happen. With a serious look, the Proto states that they can't wait for anyone and will have to handle this dangerous situation on their own. Hayona is startled by the idea and asks if he really plans to face a colossal monster of that size with only her help. Rei confirms this and says that since the true mastermind behind everything is still hiding, they can't trust anyone else to ask for reinforcements right now. He then looks at her with a serene gaze and reveals that in the current situation, the only person he can truly trust is her. Hayona is left completely speechless and surprised to hear those sincere words of trust from her partner. Meanwhile, more civilians keep stumbling and running desperately through the capital's dark alleys in search of shelter. The dragon menacingly approaches a mother and her young child who ended up cornered in the middle of the street. Desperate and crying in terror, the woman hugs the child and cries out for divine help as she sees the beast prepare to attack them. Without hesitation, Hyona leaps in front of them and draws her weapon to defend them from the oncoming attack. She blocks the impact of the blow with her sword, generating an explosion of bright sparks in midair. Determined to protect the innocent, the warrior activates her firepower with a furious battle cry. She delivers a devastating flaming slash called Leviatine directly against the opponent to push it back. Hayona orders the mother and child to run away immediately, while she buys time, receiving a heartfelt thank you from the victims as they rush away. From afar, Rei silently watches his companion's extremely brave and determined attitude on the battlefield. Hayona turns to him and accepts that they truly have no other choice but to fight together with all their might. With a confident smile on her face, she wields her sword and declares that it's time to hunt a dragon. She asks what the plan is, since their normal attacks can't even scratch the monster, but Rei guarantees there's always a way to defeat any beast. The young man reminds her that she is the real expert in dragon hunting here and should know this better than anyone. Hayona agrees and explains that in a normal situation, she would start by cutting off the enemy's wings and tail to take away its mobility. She adds that the next step would be to strike the throat to stop the breath attacks, but that magical barrier prevents any conventional strategy. Hearing this, Rei suggests using the dragon's own barrier against it as he begins to materialize a magical item on his fingers. Using his creation skill, he materializes the ring known as the Round Table of Ruin, which possesses the special property of considerably expanding magic capacity. The Proto shows the ring and explains that the accessory serves as an excellent amplifier to raise her power to its absolute limit. Finally, Rei asks Hyona to act as bait to distract the dragon just for the time needed until he finishes his preparations. The battle begins intensely with the enraged dragon spreading its destructive flames across the city while Hyona tries to hold it down. Hyona quickly prepares to use one of her best sword combat techniques. She delivers her powerful strike called Flame Dance, directly attacking the colossal monster. The warrior is completely amazed to realize that the power of her attacks has reached a whole different level and that her mana is not running out. She mentally praises Ray's incredible magical tool, but knows she won't be able to keep up that pace for long without the city being destroyed. Suddenly, the dragon quickly recovers and begins to concentrate a terrible beam of energy right before Hyona's eyes. Seeing that she is in a vulnerable position, the Vice leader senses the impending danger and fears the worst. However, a cable fired by Ray quickly wraps around her sword to save her from that desperate situation. The monster fires its overwhelming breath, but ends up missing the target thanks to her companion's quick intervention. The dragon glares at its opponents with a fierce and watchful gaze in the middle of all the dust. Ray appears gliding through the air, using his Aegis magical shield to repel the immense energy generated by the beast's flames. He leaps incredibly high toward the sky, while Hyona watches him in awe from the ground. She recalls that Ray planned to use the creature's own protective barrier against it, but she still wonders what the real plan behind this is. The warrior tries to understand how it would be possible to move such a gigantic beast using only the strength of that magical barrier. In a brief flashback, the Proto explains with total calmness that he intends to send the monster flying along with its protective barrier. Ray recalls that although ordinary physical attacks cannot hurt the enemy directly, he ended up discovering a crucial detail about the opponent. The young man reveals that the dragon's magical barrier is not able to completely absorb the kinetic impact generated by attacks. Hyona understands the logic, but gets extremely worried looking at the colossal size of that giant monster. She keeps wondering what absurd technique the Proto is going to use to manage to move such an immense creature. Back in the present, the fearsome dragon roars fiercely and begins firing several massive fireballs toward Ray. With extreme agility and without showing hesitation, the young man dodges the consecutive explosions as he advances through the air. Ray draws his mana cannon mid-flight and calmly states that the solution to the problem is quite simple. He compares the beast to a bird trapped in a cage and explains that if the bird refuses to move of its own free will, the young man points his magical weapon directly at the colossal dragon's energy shield. Ray fires a devastating energy blast that hits the opponent's magical barrier with full force. He shouts with determination that you just simply have to move the entire cage at once. Concentrating all his strength into the shot, the warrior releases an absurd amount of accumulated energy. The overwhelming kinetic impact hits the barrier and shoves the dragon's gigantic body backward. Under the hero's watchful gaze, the colossal beast is violently launched toward the heavens by the force of the shot. The monster is flung far beyond the clouds, leaving a glowing trail of energy across the sky. On the city ground, Hyona watches everything completely frozen in shock to see that he actually managed to send the monster flying. Meanwhile, Ray uses the momentum of the recoil to soar into the heavens right behind the launched dragon. He activates his magic creation skill to summon one of his largest and most imposing relics. Before his eyes appears a colossal fortress floating majestically amidst the clouds, known as the Floating Citadel. The dragon Zerixiel lands violently on the massive platform of the magical fortress floating in the sky. Ray faces the dragon under the light of the full moon and declares that this place will be the stage for their final battle. At that moment, it is revealed that the body of the legendary Ryle Burger is actually a mythic-grade magic doll that is extremely powerful. The Proto mentally analyzes that this artificial vessel possesses 10 times more mana than his former peak, capable of being amplified even further with the use of the magic ring. He knows that if he can concentrate and compress all this immense power into a single point, he will be able to defeat even that evil dragon. However, upon delivering a powerful blow, the hero's arm begins to crack severely under the pressure of the mana. Looking at the damage to his hand, Ray realizes that the mana circuits of his artificial body ended up exploding from failing to withstand the load. He explains that mana circuits work like human blood vessels, distributing energy throughout the body. The young man concludes that the sudden spike in power generated by the magic ring was simply greater than what the body's artificial structure could endure. Ray reflects that normal humans have natural limiters in their brains for safety, but that magic doll body allows him to easily push past limits even if it causes damage. Examining the damage, the warrior playfully concludes that his creation's design definitely needs some structural improvements. The immense floating fortress continues to glow intensely in the night sky above the capital. Back on the ground, Hyona looks up in awe and wonders in fright what kind of monster the Proto really is to do something so monumental. Rei suddenly appears behind her, calling her name, making the warrior sigh in relief to see that he is still alive. She goes into shock upon noticing the severe injuries on his arm, but the young man plays down the situation, saying it was just a little recoil from the attack. Hayona complains that his arm is completely scorched and that it isn't just a mere recoil, but Rei ignores the protests and warns that he needs her intelligence and sword up there to finish the job. Looking at the immense floating fortress above them, Hayona comments that their next destination will be right up there. Rei confirms with determination and warns that the true goal of that ascent is to bring down the terrible dragon Zerixile once and for all. As soon as they reach the magical fortress, the colossal monster roars furiously upon noticing the presence of the two intruders in its territory. Rei takes his combat stance at the top of the floating platform, wielding his magical weapon without showing any sign of fear in the face of danger. Kept lighthearted, Hayona playfully asks if he is more hyped than before, but the proto replies that she just got scared from being launched into the sky. The enraged dragon wastes no time and begins firing consecutive blasts of explosive flames toward the heroes. The red-haired warrior screams in fright at the absurd violence of the attacks, but the young man calmly lets her know that they just need to dodge everything. Hayona panics temporarily and wonders aloud how it could be possible to defeat a creature as broken and monstrous as that one. Rei asks her to calm down and explains that the opponent's body is not much different from the ordinary dragons she usually hunts, the only real difference being that protective mana barrier. Hearing that, Hayona regains her composure and analyzes that if the structure is identical, their weakness must be exploited at the moment of the roar. The young warrior details that dragons have a fire sac in their throat where they accumulate all their magical energy. She continues explaining that when the creature roars, all the body's mana concentrates in that throat region. Rei smirks as he completes her train of thought, deducing that it's exactly at that moment that the magical barrier around the body becomes thinnest and most vulnerable. The proto ponders that mana is fluid, which is why they need surgical precision to find the exact opening, revealing that he has the perfect tool for the job. Iona agrees with the strategy, but worriedly questions how he plans to break that protective barrier using an arm that is completely injured. The young man surprises his companion by mysteriously revealing that he won't be the one delivering the final blow to destroy the enemy shield. Suddenly, the terrible dragon unleashes another devastating breath against the platform, generating an immense cloud of smoke and debris around them. Iona runs to dodge the impact and shouts, failing to understand what he meant by that, arguing that she doesn't possess firepower as absurd as his. However, Rei walks calmly through the chaos and states with total conviction that she is indeed perfectly capable of pulling off such a feat. With a confident smile on his face, the proto fixes his gaze on the young woman and reminds her that she has an incredible trump card kept away. He reveals he knows she has an ultimate move that is extremely dangerous and too powerful to be used within the city limits. The warrior quickly recalls the devastation of her own techniques as she observes the destruction around the battlefield. Hayona realizes he has been looking into her past battles, but still comments that her trump card doesn't compare to the overwhelming level of power he displayed. Rei downplays her modesty and guarantees that the circular ring he gave her will be able to extract the true maximum potential from her and her demonic flame sword. With a challenging smile, Hyona is intrigued to notice that he even knows the secret of her legendary weapon, asking seriously who he really is behind all that skill. The proto calmly changes the subject, saying he's just a rookie adventurer who happens to understand a bit more than usual about magical tools. He cuts the conversation short upon noticing the enemy's movement and seriously warns that it's time to end the small talk to kick off the ultimate counterattack. The dragon Zerixale lets out another terrifying roar and begins accumulating blazing flames around its giant maw. A series of consecutive explosions shakes the entire stone structure of the magical citadel in the sky. Rei skillfully leaps backward while using his geometric Aegis shield to negate the tongues of fire surging toward him. The young man calls out his partner's name to signal that the time to act has finally come. Hayona confirms out loud that she understood the signal as she runs swiftly across the flooded surface of the platform. She playfully complains about the fact that the warrior loves making her work to her absolute limits to serve as a distraction. The imposing dragon roars in fury and lunges with everything to try and snap up the warrior moving rapidly before it. Showing no fear, the young woman channels her fire mana directly into her legs to activate her special mobility technique. She uses her legendary movement technique called Blazing Steps to glide across the battlefield like a glowing trail of fire. With extremely fast movements, Hyona dodges the giant beast's deadly lunges with surgical mastery. She leaps and delivers a precise strike against the dragon's snout to keep it entirely focused on her movements. Seeing the monster prepare another massive attack, the vice leader quickly pulls back and calls for Rei to execute the next part of the plan. Rei raises his left hand and begins to concentrate a glowing spherical energy on his fingertips. He activates his magic creation technique to summon the detection sound waves, a device designed to map and visualize the exact flow of mana around them. As he prepares, the young man recalls his old beloved companions Sarah and Lit, feeling as if their warm presence were right by his side at this crucial moment of mutual trust. Rei reflects with determination that when someone decides to place all their faith in your abilities, your only duty is to live up to that trust with victory. The dragon Zerixel opens its jaws wide, concentrating an immense amount of heat and destructive energy in its throat to fire. The creature focuses its burning gaze directly on the young man and begins the process of unleashing its overwhelming breath of flames. Hyona senses the danger and screams desperately for Rei upon noticing that the beast is about to incinerate her companion. A violent curtain of fire and explosions engulfs the spot where the warrior was positioned on the platform. However, the floating detection sensor keeps operating perfectly in midair, mapping all the mana generated by the dragon in the sky. Rei emerges completely unscathed amidst the smoke of the explosions and calmly asks the device to reveal what he is searching for so badly. With an extremely focused gaze, the hero points his finger toward the legendary beast to pinpoint the exact weak spot in its magical barrier. The detection device emits magical sonar waves that reveal a three-dimensional thermal map of the dragon in midair. As predicted, the colossal creature roars furiously as it accumulates blazing flames in its giant maw all at once. Rei watches the holographic graphic closely and finally manages to identify the weak spot where the monster's protective barrier became vulnerable during the roar. Knowing it's the right moment to act, Hyona charges forward with determination and invokes the full power of her demonic flame sword, Liavaten. Thanks to the immense flow of power provided by Rei's ring, a colossal explosion of heat and energy erupts from her burning blade. The proto follows his allies' movements and recalls that this is Hyona Carmine's ultimate secret technique. He knows she is the grand holder of the absolute record for dragon slays in the entire history of the kingdom as she readies her most devastating sword art. Concentrating all the heat of her mana, the warrior unleashes her legendary strike called Firebird directly against the giant beast. The devastating impact of the flame attack hits the enemy shield's vulnerable split dead-on, shattering the barrier with a colossal explosion of magical shards. Exhausted but relieved, the red-haired girl floats amidst the ashes and celebrates that the two finally managed to overcome that absurd challenge. However, before the dust can settle, the dragon reveals it still has the strength to fire one more devastating beam of fire right through the mist. Hyona falls into absolute shock upon realizing the new threat coming her way without her having any time to react in midair. Without wasting a single second, Rei swiftly appears in front of her and uses his magical weapons to intercept the opponent's overwhelming attack. The young man safely protects his companion and notes with total calmness that the monster's annoying defensive barrier has finally vanished completely. Seizing the unique opportunity, the legendary hero begins to conjure and materialize his feared holy sword Excalibur. With a confident smile on his face beside his brave ally, Rei firmly declares that now it's their turn to show the true counterattack.